angry at you? Is that
No,
the
one cat that's angry at me because, there used to be a place in the window where the cat could like try and get in the backyard, and I closed that up. And so now at about this time of the day, every day, the cat comes along and like just sits right there. See her?
Yeah.
And she just kind of like scowls at me and goes, "Yeah," like making it known that she's very angry about the fact that there's no longer a hole, that she can no longer go in the backyard. And it's not enough to do this once a day. She's got to do it several times a day.
Oh, of course.
So I've decided that I'm going to have, maybe I'll have her here for this just because she's generally entertaining.
That's cool.
Aren't you, Kitty, huh? You want to be part of the broadcast, huh?
The cat's already part of the broadcast. We're live.
Okay,
no, that's cool. That's actually a good way to start.
Yeah. Okay, wow, shoot. So we're rolling already?
We're rolling.
Everyone like let in on this little like domestic vision of my angry cat.
Yeah, that was a good one though. You should have seen the one that Loomer had with Jason Goodman one time when she just went on a tirade and had no clue she was live. That was that was a classic. She went totally nuts on that one. But there you go.
Please stop asking your question.
Yeah, please stop asking your question. All right, so I'm gonna let a few people get in here. I'm gonna run the trailer so everybody can watch that. So that'll give us about a 4-minute head start there. I'll make it take the whole screen, and let me go to that tab and get it started here. Hey, that's us.
Oh, sorry.
That's all good. Just if you need to, just mute your mic if you need to talk or something. But this clip is 4 minutes and 40 seconds. Here we go.
All right.
Oh shit! I got to restart this thing. Hang on just a second there. I think I screwed that up with the audio again. Every time I go to that thing, I always forget to. I have to click it to tell it to use the audio from that. So here we go. I'll click that and share audio. This time it'll work. And boom. Share. Sorry about that, folks.
That's all right. It was interesting. It's always interesting when Mike Turber's around.
Yeah.
Tino in San Diego. Take my badge off.
All right, so we're live again.
Your badge. What's your badge for? What? Fugitive recovery agent?
Yeah, because there's somebody that's down there that I may grab, make $1,000-$1,500.
What is it? You're a bounty hunter? Oh, that must be something else I haven't told you yet.
Yes. These little random weird moments.
About an hour outside of San Diego, getting ready to pull into the Hala Casino. The man I'm about to talk to is known as Robin Hood 702. He's a professional gambler. I'm here to talk to him about why he was kicked out of the MGM and the lawsuit that he filed afterwards and the things that he discovered in that lawsuit.
Someone breached my privacy at MGM casinos where they were basically giving my information to multiple people. When I say information, I'm talking about screenshots from the MGM computers where my address, phone number, how much I played, how much I brought, my average bet, everything. Stuff that a gambler doesn't want anybody else to know. And they somehow got access to this information. The reason for the suit was a privacy breach, but it encompassed a lot of other stuff within the lawsuit. I found out some very disturbing things. The former MGM director of surveillance told me over 200 cameras were off at the time of the Mandalay Bay shooting. And I got a recording of him.
October 1st, Mandalay Bay had over 200 cameras not working. Now that doesn't mean they turned them off. They were not working. They were not repaired. So the cameras broke and they were not repaired. This was 209 gaming cameras.
It's security negligence. Cameras were out. They were untrained in some of the equipment and the protocols and how to do the different systems. And that came out in their reports to the police. And I did stories on that. So there was no way this was going to go to a courtroom. That's why I agreed to the settlement.
I think that there was a clear intent that this would never go to trial. And I had a problem with that because from day one, I said the truth needs to be told.
If we did go to trial, all of this would come out. And that's exactly what they didn't want.
And when they chose the mediator, they chose Jennifer Togliatti. This is a judge who stepped down a year early from her retirement to actually go work for a company called ARM. And when she goes to work there, what is her first case that she's handed? Oh, wow, look, it's an MGM case. And who is her father? MGM's vice president, head of security, safety, and surveillance, none other than George Togliatti.
There is a conflict of interest there because her dad is the VP of security.
Ms. Togliatti retired from the bench at 19 years instead of going that one more year for retirement. Judge Togliatti, I believe, was brought in to save MGM and her father's ass.
How did they not say, we should not do this? They didn't do it because they wanted the fix in. Period. The end. The fix has always been in Vegas. That's what they do. It's ridiculous. It can only happen in Vegas.
Las Vegas is a big facade. The whole city is an illusion. And the person that's getting in the way of the illusion of selling this case to the American public is Roger Keenest. This is a claimant who actually ran back in and tried to save the lives of others. And this is a slap in his face, and he pulled out of the settlement. He is the single person that we know of that opted out.
We never even got the damn truth, and that's all I wanted. And that's why I opted out, because no amount of money is going to buy the truth. And somebody had to stand up to them. People need to be held accountable so this can never happen again.
It's a twisted tale of corruption in Vegas.
It's an incestuous thing that happens in Vegas. They all protect each other like brothers and sisters. This case should have been in the billions.
You have a case of someone trying to put on the illusion that everyone is happy, when in reality, the only people that win in this case were the lawyers and MGM, and that's it. The take was $800 million and divided up with around 4,500 people, and it's not a lot of money. Neither is the $49 million that MGM, a corporation who grosses over $10 billion a year, has to actually pay out of pocket. So MGM won.
All right, guys. Well, that is one of the trailers for Money Machine, and with me today is my newest
trailer.
Well, welcome to this special edition
that's
of
good. Now let me kill
Law
that
and Order in America. I'm Jason Chaffetz in tonight for.
Had that the other screen going on in the background, but yeah. So that there's actually the way Ram is doing this is really cool because he was filming some candid footage, I'll say. And he's incorporated that in. And at the time when he was filming the candid footage, I wasn't exactly sure how he was going to use it. But then it came out really good. I like the way he does that.
It's kind of a fun, quite frankly, a lot of it is just kind of sprinkled here and there on social media. It's just like, the kind of in between times, not so you kind of get to see. It's more casual, some of it has nothing to do with the movie. Like, a lot of weird things happen when we're making this film. So it's just, that's what I like about it. It's just kind of like, lets the audience in on like where we were at that day, what was going on. Like that day when you told me you're a bounty hunter and whipped out your freaking dog. One of about 476 weird things. you
Yeah,
told me.
only a couple weird things have happened since we've been together. I did warn you, though. I did warn you.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do here is you and I'll talk for a moment, and then we're going to look at some of these questions that may come up. If you, just so everybody knows, if you're on Facebook and you're watching this, we can't see your questions because that interface doesn't exactly work. So you'd have to come to the YouTube channel to do that. And when you do, if you type a question, just type it in all caps. That way I can quickly recognize that it's a question. And if you want, just put Mike at the beginning or Ram at the beginning, so I know if you're directing it to one of us or how that I'll try to determine the question in a way. But Ramsey, tell us about the movie and what got you to do this.
Sure. Well, Money Machine is really about what Vegas is about: money, cash, and Vegas is a money machine. Billions on the line. Tourism. You know, Vegas is about bright lights and action and money and people coming there and losing money. And, you know, when 1 October happened, everything kind of ground to a halt for about 4 seconds. And then the money machine got back on with it. And sadly, as we explore in the movie, it does kind of seem like some of the victims of 1 October were pushed aside. And there was an attempt to kind of make it look from a PR standpoint like these places like MGM and like that the city cared. But all evidence is really to the contrary. They didn't care. And I mean, you have the memorial, you know, the Healing Garden, 7 miles away from the site on this weird little corner in town that tourists never go to. None of that's an accident. And it wasn't an accident that there was, the LVMP took 70 minutes to get into Paddock's room, that when they entered the room, you know, you had a freaking accidental discharge. So the LVMPD can't even enter a freaking room where a guy's dead without having their gun going off. And their leading sheriff can't even, just neglected to mention that in any of his mini press conferences, getting his face time, because it happened in an election year. And that's one of the things we explore in Money Machine, is how the greed of the people in power, MGM's greed, Sheriff Lombardo's greed and incompetence. And, the movie really shows how these people didn't care and how they used 1 October for their own means. And no one did that more so than Steve Sissy Quack, the glad-handing governor who saw an opportunity to get international publicity and seized it with his Vegas strong load of crap. And why do I say it's a load of crap? Because it was supposed to be about the victims. And if you talk to a lot of the people who are supposed to get money, a lot of them never got it. And, it raised over $10 million. And in the first 5 months, less than $20,000 of that money had been distributed in the first 5 months. And Mike, you and I both know, and we've interviewed people making this film, that here's the thing, man. When a shooting happens like this, these people need emotional support and they need financial support. They need it quick. And, a lot of them were injured. A lot of them were hurt. And also just the PTSD. And, a certain glad-handing governor was too busy jumping in front of cameras, getting his ugly face on television to actually make sure that the money made it to the victims. Right. And the sad thing is it actually worked, and now Sissy Quack is the governor and I'm going to $500 luncheons and having his worthless ass kissed.
Yeah, and everybody that helped him out seemed to be pulled into the politics too. You got Jim Murren is over there. You got George Tagliati.
Like that jackass knows anything about COVID. I mean, you got a medical degree, Murren. Like it's just a big circle jerk. And these, you got like Lombardo and Sissy Quack and Jim Murren, just these rich jerk offs who just sit around and I don't know. What do you do when you're these guys?
I don't know. I want to be a fly on that wall whenever they start talking about this stuff, because it's got to be a very interesting conversation on how they're going to try to develop some sort of way to manipulate the system and everything they're doing.
How can we make this work for us? You know? And I think that's the sad part. And so I think Money Machine is really about kind of the people left behind and how the Vegas money machine, anything that gets in the way of that machine gets pushed aside, thrown out. And it's really kind of a peek behind the scenes, And one thing that I don't think a lot of people understand is that the 1 October that was presented to the public was a facade. There was just a lot of lies, and there was a lot of pretending going on. And so as you know, Mike, I started making Money Machine because after this happened, because of my previous movie, What Happened in Vegas, which exposed corruption in the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. What happened was that movie shook up Vegas pretty good. It won, the top awards.
Number one on iTunes and everything.
Yeah. I mean, it got distribution, got distributed in over a dozen countries, on television, internationally. I mean, geez, like people in Germany sending me, like it's translating to German. So, but because of that film, I always thought that I would never be able to go back into Vegas again because all the cops would hate me. But what actually ended up happening, which I never expected, was that a lot of the good officers in the department who were now retired and kind of resented the corruption and the corrupt leadership of Sheriff Joe Lombardo started reaching out to me after 1 October happened because they were getting information straight from in the department from active officers who they knew well. And these retired officers, retired sergeants and lieutenants who become my friends were really the most important people because they were the ones telling me what was really going on and how that differed from what Sheriff Lombardo was telling the public. Like, for example, hiding the accidental discharge. That was one of the first things I learned. And actually, 2 LVMPD cops reached out to me with that information. Yeah. And when I verified it was true, I think that was my first trip back to Vegas. And then it just went on and on. And then, later I found out about Cordell Hendricks shaking like a little baby, being a coward in the hallway while Paddock was murdering people. Right. And it was kind of interesting that, like, when they did press conferences, they tried to, like, con the public. They're like, it took us 70 minutes to get in to the, it took 70 minutes for us to get through the door. But but nothing wrong there. Like, our response time was excellent, and we're wonderful, and vote for Joe Lombardo for sheriff. Right.
And then even then, when Sheriff Lombardo was doing one of his first impromptu conferences, right when the event happened, I was listening on the radio about 10 minutes into it. So I heard about the last 5 minutes of the shooting, and then the rest of it transpired. So I was watching the TV, trying to get that information, and then listening to the radio. And when Sheriff Lombardo said that, one of the first things he said was, when we broke in the door, we engaged the suspect. And so I'm thinking, oh, that's what the shots were that I heard, because I heard the shots on the radio, and I was like, okay, I don't remember anyone saying, but then I remembered that it was. Then I was like, wait a second, there was only a 3-round burst, and this is already the first lie, and it's like the first conference he gave. But then I shrugged it off and said, maybe it was misinformation, maybe he just didn't, he wasn't getting the right information and all. But then it developed a pattern from it, because I'll admit the first couple of conferences, things that he did when he was out there before Aaron started standing behind him the whole time, I thought he was doing okay. He looked like he was doing okay. And then you could tell as the conferences progressed, he got more and more nervous. Those eyes from behind him were burning. You can see this. It's ridiculous.
And the ever-present Steve Sissy Quack in the background there just oh, I'm going to be governor. Yep. Like that was one of the things that people should, I want to go back and look at those press conferences. And Steve Sissy Quack was actually
you can see him moving around. He's like positioning himself.
He was a city councilman at the time. Okay.
Right.
A county commissioner. I'm sorry. He was a county commissioner. And, you tell me what cities you go to where a county commissioner, I mean, what the hell role did he have being, I mean, he wasn't speaking usually, but he's just sitting there awkwardly in the background, just like this. And he had no business being there. And it was like this circle jerk. It was like Lombardo and him are friends, and they're kissing each other's asses. And, oh, yeah, you can stand and go get your FaceTime.
Let's start a GoFundMe account. Let's do that too.
I mean, it was a very transparent attempt. And I mean, listen, if Vegas Strong, I like the idea of Vegas Strong. I like the idea of supporting the victims. But when I started interviewing the victims and talking to them, I started realizing that there seemed to be very little effort in actually getting them the money in a timely manner. And I think a lot of people watching can probably know many people who struggled mightily after this. And this could have been eased if they had actually cared more about doing the right thing and getting the money to the people who needed it, rather than getting in front of the cameras. And listen, I don't think, I mean, if Steve Sisolak was here right now, could he really look me or you in the face and say that he didn't, that he wasn't grandstanding, that he didn't use this event? There's no way he could say that.
Well, in the very beginning, I didn't know any of these characters. I wasn't real familiar with the politics over there, who ran what.
Right.
But one of the first things I noticed was at one of the conferences where Sissy Quack was at, as soon as the cameras stopped, because I was going to wait for the cameras to stop and I was going to ask him a question. I didn't want to get on camera. And so as soon as the camera stopped, he's like, oh, no one's rolling? Okay. Pew, he was out of there. And I was trying to be respectful to ask a question after, because I'm a little bit controversial. Maybe he knows me, maybe not. Maybe he saw me in the elevator. Who knows? But then he just bolted, and he literally said out loud, "Is anyone still rolling? Okay, I got to go." And
I remember seeing him at the 6 month. So, and we have some of that in the film. You'll recall the 6 month reunion, our anniversary. I just remember like all these television cameras and Sissy Quack walking around with a big rose being like, people need to know that things are okay and that they're supported. And it's like, can you be a phonier?
Right.
Like,
and I feel bad even saying that, because someone removed from us and not really seeing this from the inside like we see it, it almost looks like we're specifically attacking someone. But after a while, you start seeing, wow, this guy really is just doing this to get elected.
And not only that, if you look into Steve Sisolak and how he got his money, that's a pretty shady. Have you ever seen? Do you know the dirty details of that?
Why don't you tell us? Or you do not want to say it?
Well, it's you know what? I'm gonna actually put it up to people to do research on their own. Land out by the airport and some things that really show his true nature.
Okay. Our first question comes from Tony. He also goes by Thumper. His first question is, how come I have never seen or heard of any of these people in the documentary before?
You haven't heard of Jesus Campos or Joe Lombardo
or Mike Turber? I know he's heard of me because he's made like 500 videos about me.
Or Stephen Paddock or Eric Paddock?
Yeah. So I think what he's referring to is probably he hasn't seen Catherine Thornton somewhere else before.
Because these are regular people. These are survivors.
Exactly.
I mean, you have to understand, like, this movie is about the everyday people. It's about the cool, honest, hardworking people who showed up to a country concert and having fun. So these are not people who are out there trying to be famous. They're people who tried to show up at a concert and maybe have a beer or two and listen to some good music. So that's why. I mean, you know, this isn't a story about stars it's not about Jason Aldean. It's about the people who really suffered from this.
Right.
You know, like Catherine Thornton and like Chris. Chris is the woman who, you know, she's a hairdresser and her arm was injured. So that put her out. I mean, she's also the one who struggled terribly financially and really, and I remember having those conversations like, why isn't Vegas Strong helping you out?
Right.
And she's like, I don't know. I called the Vegas Resiliency Center and I could never get anybody on the phone. And it was kind of like this image. It was all about like looking like Vegas cared. But then when you peek behind the scenes, they did not.
Right. And when I was there, I initially was wrapped up into the Vegas Strong thing too, because I hadn't looked at it from any other. At the time, I wasn't suspicious of it. And then when talking to some of the survivors and some of the victims' families, I started noticing that Vegas Strong was made to get money fast. It was to bypass all of any bureaucracy or any things to cut funds or state of emergency or whatever was going to be a roadblock to getting money to the people. And it did the same thing. It became its own roadblock. You know, so like you said, within the first 5 months, only not even $20,000 was distributed. And these people needed to pay their rent. They had to pay their car payment. They had to pay all their bills. They were losing stuff. They were losing their children, you know, all over some of this stuff. And that became a huge turning point for me. I started looking at everybody in a different light. And then you start hearing things. And then, of course, you and I met. And then that's when everything kind of went all kinds of different angles. And I was already doing stuff for the attorneys, trying to figure out, okay, is the elevators what are the windows? You know, I had to learn about the windows and stuff and some other stuff. But then it just got to the point where this is no longer about the shooting. The shooting is a done deal. Now we're past the shooting, and a whole new thing has opened up. It's like, wow, these people are really just going around trying to get this city back to business, sweeping as much under the rug. And because I've been to other mass shooting events, this is my 13th one, number 13, lucky 13, I guess. And so in all of the other ones, whether it's a mass shooting, I have to say mass casualty or mass shooting, because they're two different types. And when you get into the investigative phase, because I'm not like a paid investigator, I would go in there and do favors or somebody, whatever. And when you start looking at evidence in other cities other than Vegas, there's nothing I've ever seen like this. Whereas you're constantly chasing things, and there was just nothing in the beginning. MGM held on to all the CCTV footage. If someone robs a 7-Eleven, within 15 minutes, their picture's all over the damn news and everything about it, and you see everything. This thing here was a quick, let's shut this down, let's control the narrative, let's control the information that's getting out of here, that way it doesn't bite us on the ass. And that was clear to me, and I'd never seen anything like that. I kind of figured there would be something like that going on, but not at the level that it was, and so blatant.
Well, it's important to understand a couple things about Vegas is that it is definitely a town where things are made to extreme efforts are made to conceal things. And what I'm talking about is, people were like, well, why weren't there video cameras in the hallways? And there were cameras in the elevator banks, but not in the hallways. And that's actually kind of the norm in Vegas. And the reason for that, which some people might not know, because you would think there should be, right? Like if you're walking down a hallway and, like, why isn't there surveillance cameras there, right? That would make sense, right?
Exactly.
Okay, well, the reason there isn't, the real reason, they might tell you otherwise, is because Vegas is where sometimes the bad boys go to play, and that means maybe some cocaine, maybe some hookers. And I mean, so think about this. If you have a high roller and he calls a hooker up to his room and they get in a big fight and 911 gets called and she alleges that he hit her and all this stuff. Okay, right. As soon as you have, if you have a video camera of her walking out of the room and all this stuff, now all of a sudden there's a 911 call. Okay, so this high roller is being exposed, because when there's a 911 call, it becomes public record, right? And so now all of a sudden, not only is this shady element has been introduced, whereas and also the hotel might be liable. So what's the solution? Just turn the cameras off. Don't have cameras, so that you're not exposing that element. And of course, the downside of this is that you have some very lax security. And that may be why the fact that this dude was able to just get the 20 guns up there into the room, and the fact that MGM had over 200 cameras that were not working that night, surveillance cameras. So this is kind of the other side of Vegas. If you got enough money in that town, you can pretty much get away with everything. And they're regularly in the practice of doing things. If you're a high roller, you could probably get away with murder in that town.
I think it's already been done a few times, probably. But going back to the cameras a little bit, Mandalay Bay has 3,300 cameras. And so out of those, the 200 or so cameras that were off were non-gaming cameras. And those are the ones that we wanted to see, because they would be the perimeter. We don't need to see him playing his video game for hours or whatever he was doing. Everyone wants to see, okay, when did he come in? What was he carrying? Where did he go? And we still don't have all of that footage. But to have that many cameras off, basically tells you that all they care about is money, because the only cameras they guarantee that works are the ones that are aiming at the tables. They don't, if they cared about public safety, about,
because that comes back to money, right?
Yep. Bingo. Yeah. It sure does.
And that's all. And see, that's the thing. Some people have said, wow, this movie's really harsh. And you're right. It is harsh. It's harsh because there's been a lot of dishonesty here. Yeah. There's been a lot of dishonesty on MGM's part, and there's been a lot on the LVMPD's part. Absolutely. And they have lied to the public. Yeah. And in the police department's case, the public pays their salary. You know, the police work for the public. And yet in this case, in 1 October, it did appear that they were actually really working for MGM. I mean, you had that embarrassing incident where MGM publicly disputed Joe Lombardo's timeline.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the sheriff releases a freaking timeline, and then the next day the casino comes out and says, we have reason to believe that this timeline is not accurate.
Right.
And then you have Sheriff Lombardo get up there at a press conference and say, MGM, I'm fully aware of MGM's statement about the timeline not being accurate. Exactly. And he goes, I agree with their statement. Yeah. Okay, so you actually have a freaking casino, like, and why was this important?
The 6 minutes was extremely important.
Potentially billions of dollars on the line. Yep. And that timeline, a lot of it comes back to legal liability, and little things could have moved. Little things in that timeline could have moved things hundreds of millions in one direction or another. Right. And that's the thing people. And so I mean, I do believe that, you know, there's a lot of things that were kind of misrepresented, and we expose a lot of that, but Mike, you know, like there's certain things we'll never be able to get access to.
And there's a lot of stuff that, there's a lot of information that you and I are aware of that we've discussed, but because we couldn't, to put it in the movie, you basically have to do the same thing you would as if you're going to take it to court. If you would sit on the witness stand and swear that what you're saying is true, then it's okay to go in the movie as long as you can back it up. Some of the stuff that we come across, it's like, okay, I need actual tangible evidence. People bring us stuff all the time. They bring it to you, they bring it to me, and they say, hey, look at this. And we look at it, and sometimes there may be something there, sometimes not. And case in point would be the recent one, the story that ended up getting on NBC News. And that was with Roger. Roger had, talked about Jennifer Togliatti and the George Togliatti connection. And he'd been saying that apparently for a while, and no one.
Yeah, and really he was right. Roger was right. I mean, to Roger's credit, I mean, and Roger was one of the brave ones that night. He was one of the guys running into the gunfire to help save people. But then you also get the other thing, like the executive in charge of Survivor Affairs, and some of his information So you have to get a lot of crap that's not true.
Yeah, you have to weed through it, and then you have to figure out, not only did we try to figure out the motivation of the person who did the shooting in the first place, we have to figure out the motivation of every single actor after that. Sissy Quack, everybody, including people that we view as friends. It's like, okay, after about the third or fourth situation that you're like, okay, that didn't really come out to be true. Well, I'm going to let that ride because everybody's got a good heart, right? But then after a while, you just go a different direction. Okay, another question here.
You have a lot of. The thing is, I think you need to really be able to prove something before you throw it up there.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And you do have people who kind of they like to just throw things out there that are really controversial, and then is it true? Is it not true? Sometimes they don't even care, and I just think that's not a good approach. That's not rigorous journalism. And if somebody makes a career of that, how can they have any credibility? So, I mean, that's one of the reasons this movie took a while to make, is because we had to make darn sure that we were right about this stuff, and we had to get footage. And the second shooter thing was really interesting. And Mike, you were really the guy who was keen helping crack that with the surveillance footage. I mean, because I'll be honest with you, when this first happened, I certainly believed that was a strong possibility that there were second shooters. Yeah. And I thought it was a really interesting direction to go, but as the more and more evidence that surfaced, and you were the guy who actually pulled down surveillance footage from 6 different camera angles before the concert started until early in the morning, and you can zoom in on these cameras and have a high view and a low view and all this stuff. So my question is, if there were multiple shooters and we've got cameras pointing at the event, then why couldn't we see any?
Exactly.
And then people say, oh, they were crisis actors. It was all staged. That's a hell of an interesting theory. I think that the government would actually be competent enough.
Exactly.
To think that the government would actually be competent enough to have 22,000 people running around acting and
not one person would ever break rank, and everybody's saying, oh, they signed NDAs and stuff like this. Someone's going to sign an NDA and allow them to be shot at. Yeah. All right. So here's another question. This one I'll probably end up answering. It says, did you reach out to Owen at all, the guy who filmed the live leak video? he would have been a big attribute to the documentary. To Thumper directly, I wasn't part of bringing that to Ramsey, so I can't directly answer that, but in reference to Owen himself, if I would have known that footage was going to be played in there like that, then I would have probably contacted Owen, because he's a friend of mine on Facebook, and asked him if he wanted to come in and talk. So, but we can still talk to him. I mean, I would still love to talk to Owen and about that video. So, Owen, if you watch this, get a hold of me. I would love to walk through that if you want. I know that there's been a lot of controversy about your video, and keep in mind, I've been in your same shoes with my video, with the Melissa Ramirez video, where people just attack me for releasing that video. So I know your story from that angle too. So I get it. And I'm going to go to if you want to touch on that one, I don't know if that really works with you. And I got Brian Shields' next question here, but go ahead. Let's go down to Brian. There we go. Okay, so Brian Shields says, why didn't Tucker and Fox ever mention that Sean Hannity was in Turber's parking lot footage mentioned in the movie? Did Catherine Lombardo and or Fox see the entire footage prior to Tucker's show? Brian, yes. Kelly at Tucker Carlson has the program manager. Her name's Kelly, and she received the entire video uncut with just like the raw video that I originally put out. So she had it. Why didn't Tucker and Fox ever mention that Sean Hannity? Because they didn't know it. Even Sean Hannity, when he recorded on that spot 2 days after the shooting, or 2 or 3 days, whatever it is, he didn't know that was a spot anyone died, because it was never marked off as a crime scene. There was no way for anyone to know it other than what Brian and Hector had written on the curb, and that's really it. There was no way for them to know. But yes, so to answer your question, Tucker wouldn't mention it because he wouldn't know it. Catherine Lombardo did, and Fox did see the entire footage before the show. That's how they were able to edit it down and conveniently hide my logo. So anyway, next question there. I got Brian.
By the way, it's not a very good time to be Tucker Carlson right now.
No, it's not. Yeah, he's
Oh my God, I was shocked by that.
Yeah, the guy left. He just upped. I don't know if he upped and resigned before it got out, or if he just said, you know what, this is going to get out. I'm out. So, not wise.
He had a huge. I mean, his show was the most successful one. I mean, it was wildly successful.
Yeah, he's considered to be the most.
Couldn't keep his closet racism in the closet.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. I mean, I think Tucker's from the Bay Area, and like I lived in the Bay Area for a couple of years. It's not easy to find racists that's one of the most liberal areas in the country. It's incredible that you would have so much freaking hate,
Yep. All right, trying to get there. Let's see. Why won't Tucker talk this on his show, or talk this on now?
Because he's got bigger problems.
Yeah, he definitely has some issues. All right, Brian's got another question here. So Brian says, how did Fox get access to that location, the same location as the Turber video? Because the media was, if you guys can actually hear in the police audio where they're directing the media over to that area as a staging area to begin with. So that area right there is on Haven. And that section was where Fox was, MSNBC was there, CBS wasn't there, but NBC was there. So those three were there. And I remember them still being in that area, that one truck being there. So any of the media had access to get beyond that first line of defense, so to speak. The first line that you got there, they corded off the whole thing. But the main one was the actual venue itself. No one was allowed in there. No media got in there. Ram, when was the first time you went back? I know you had left the first day. When was the first time you had come back after?
Well, I didn't leave right away. That's a good question. I mean, we're talking about a couple years now.
Right.
Let's see. I think it probably took a couple days before I started to like hear that Lombardo was misrepresenting things. Mm-hmm. If I remember correctly, but yeah, I started to hear I started to get phone calls from retired LVMPD cops, and they were hearing it straight from active officers in the department.
Right.
So, gosh, it was probably, it might have been like 10 or 11 days.
Okay.
I don't want to answer. I don't want to answer the question wrong because it's a couple years ago. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, I think I came back on. I drove right by it the day I was in Twin Arrows Casino when it happened, and then I got the call the next morning that got me into this, and then we just drove by it.
Okay, so I wanted to say that one thing I will tell you is because I was in Vegas on the day of October 1st.
Right.
Because it was a Sunday, and I was actually there with a friend of mine betting on football games, because we just finished what happened in Vegas, and we're kind of just relaxing and celebrating in the sports book. And I remember we got our butts kicked that day. It's like every freaking football game. And I remember it was a very somber ride home through the desert. Like anybody who's ever driven home from like Vegas after getting your ass handed.
Yeah, it's a long drive.
It's a pretty grim scene, right? I mean, have we all probably been there one time or two? And so I just vaguely remember, like, just like doing the whole poor me crap as I'm driving. And then a couple, of course, I think about 10:30 that night is when my phone just went bananas, and that's when I realized that I didn't have any real problems at all, and that these unfortunate people did. And that's when I that's when I first heard of it. It was probably about 10:30 that night, I think.
Okay. All right. Well,
one of my best friends is a guy named Mikey Slyman who runs Las Vegas Emergency Incidents. He's always the first guy to know. He's awesome. He's always the first guy to know when a story breaks.
Yeah, he was the first one to report this one. He was rolling when it happened. No one else I don't think to this date. I don't think anyone else can claim that.
No. And the other thing about Mikey is he's kind of like you, Mike. Sometimes he calls me up and tells me things they're just incredible and unbelievable. Like that couldn't possibly be true,
Right.
And they always are. And I remember just randomly, Mikey just knows people on both sides of the law. But I remember the whole Lamar Odom brothel scandal.
Oh yeah,
Mikey was the guy who broke that for like PMZ and stuff. So he's always like the guy who's like tuned into things going on in the shadows that Right. And actually, the truth is that they didn't want that whole shady Lamar Odom brothel thing getting out either, and Mikey's kind of the reason it did.
But the truth is out there.
Yeah.
All right, so we got another question here by my favorite rabbit in the whole world. Thumper says, for Ramsey, have you seen the live leak video, the one that he was referring to in his previous question? That's the one with Owen when he was running around.
I see no entry wound. I see no exit wound.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it.
What are your thoughts on that video? Do you have?
I mean, I think that it's really easy to like criticize people, like what they're doing in the moment,
right.
And I think generally speaking, that should be avoided. I think a lot of people should get because listen,
like a pass, yeah.
Well, man, I mean, think of it, like, these people were having a great night. They're sitting there listening to great music, and everyone's happy, and they got their lighters in the air, and it's like the last night of the concert. And all of a sudden, freaking hell breaks loose, and like there's shots all over, and people are dying, and they're like watching. I mean, and like, so I think it's a little like, I think people should have a little more compassion than just jump all over and be like, oh, well, if I was there, I would have done this and that. So like, I know Owen took a lot of flack for that, but probably some of that flack he took was from people who weren't there, And so, I mean, that 1 October was one of the craziest situations.
Well, I think
that was crazy because anytime you talk to somebody who was there or interview them, it's only a couple minutes before they start tearing up. And that's why I feel such compassion for them. Like even the people who didn't have physical injuries, the mental injuries, the PSD.
Yeah.
I want to say one more thing. I think the most outrageous and ludicrous thing is the crisis actor thing. Is unbelievable to me because, making this film like you, Mike, I mean, how many times do we go in and interview people?
Yeah.
And it just starts out regularly, like I'm talking to you right now. And then like a couple minutes later, as they're reliving that night, they start bawling or they start crying. Sometimes it's more subtle. And I don't know if anybody out here has ever done some acting, but faking tears, that's pretty hard. And you and I have walked into a lot of rooms and talked to a lot of survivors, and it's always pretty genuine.
Yeah.
So like the idea that like all these people are walking around who just have like putting on these Oscar-winning performances of just like crying about this crisis event is just absolutely ridiculous. You know, like if you talk to the people who were there that night, it's very authentic. This did happen, sadly. And
what's
so
hard
I just find a lot of these theories really just like wildly unrealistic. You know, they're exciting, they're interesting.
Right.
Like
I realized in the beginning when they didn't have answers that everyone was trying to find things on their own. And of course, not everybody has training in those areas, so they start coming up with stuff. And of course, where do they get their information? The internet. So I get that part, but people were going deep diving into these things. You had like helicopter theory, and to this day, I still get that. People keep telling me about this, and I'll never forget a phone call I got, and I won't say who the phone call was from, but it was the wife of one of the survivors you and I know extremely well. And she was like, I don't know what to do. I'm trying to research this. I keep seeing these helicopters, and I hear helicopters right now, and I can't even go to the store. Mike, you're the only person I trust on this. Did helicopters do this? And I said, absolutely 100% not. And she calmed down a little bit, but that sound of the helicopter had traumatized her because that's what some people remember. They start looking around.
PTSD is, man. It's real.
It is.
It's real. I mean, and it's sad because like a little trigger or fireworks too. I mean, that's another thing that I've seen that too. And like, it's sad. Like, you know, you do talk to a lot of these survivors and like something happens and they'll go into that place and it's hard.
And what makes me so mad is that when people perpetuate a theory like that has thoroughly been debunked, and the main person behind it should be admonished for it. I mean, he went to the Bronx School of High School of Bronx School of High School Science, whatever it was called. I'm brain dead right now. And this guy's supposed to be reasonably intelligent, and he kept pushing that same theory. And the problem is that you're telling people that the boogeyman, I don't want to make light of the term, is still out there. And so that's why the people have the extra fears. The PTSD is one thing, but for someone to keep saying that they didn't get the man, there's multiple shooters, which if there's multiple shooters, that means they're still out there somewhere. And these people have a genuine fear that someone is going to come after them. They don't separate it from the group. It becomes them because they all remember that sound of running, and it sounds like the bullets are following you. So
but it's like the question is, where's the hard, undeniable evidence of this stuff?
Exactly.
You know? And you do start to wonder, like, are these people like using this event to like push their agenda, and do they actually really believe this stuff? You know, because I mean, I'll give you an example. Like, I don't know if you ever saw the documentary Icarus. It was awesome. It's about like it proves that like Russia like doped their athletes for like decades.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And it proves it undeniably, meaning like, you know, and that's why the film won an Academy Award, is because you have the guy who doped the athletes, and they walk into the area where they doped them, and he explains how it's done. And it's just like, there's no doubt Icarus was telling the truth. It was rigorously, that film was rigorous. Okay.
Right.
The examination of facts was rigorous. Like, you know, New York Times reported on that stuff. So that's the kind of thing I respect, is rigorous journalism. I don't respect some guy in his, you know, mom's basement coming up with conspiracy theories so he can get more hits on his YouTube channel. That's like, that's just kind of like if it's really true, you should have undeniable evidence of it. And if you don't, then why are you putting it out there into the world? And that's one of the reasons it took a while for us to make this film, is we had to make sure that we were right about this stuff. And because of the obstruction of information with the video, and that, you know, that the LVM made it very hard. Right. You had to wait on some of these documents to come out. You know, we didn't want to put, I mean, it took a while before I was absolutely certain that there were no second shooters, and you were a big part of proving that.
Yeah.
So,
and that was one of my first goals to do that. I'll admit that I was with Loomer one day, and I thought I had found a bullet mark that would prove there was a second shooter because of the direction and all this other stuff. And then I had to actually backtrack you know, and unwind myself and say it didn't happen. But when I told the other person that, hey, you know, what I thought I found yesterday, actually, I've now determined that it's not.
Right. And that's big of you, by the way. It's big of you to actually admit that you were incorrect, because everybody's wrong every once in a while. And it's like, and that's the other thing, though. I think that's what a lot of these conspiracy theorists don't do enough of. They've got to, like, it's like, if I can't dazzle you with brilliance, I'll baffle you with bull, you know? And BS. And so it's like so once they've like started down this path of there's a helicopter, there's like, you know, freaking
words in people's mouth and all that.
The trees with machine guns or whatever their bullshit theory is, they've got to like hold on to it, and they just keep doubling down on it and going on and on and on. And some of them are pretty good at dazzling you with you know?
I think in the very beginning you thought I was one of those people. That's all the shit I was telling you. You're like, wait a second. All right, so here we go. Brian Shields says LVMPD brought backstage VIP to the same location as Turber video in the movie. Why did LVMPD use the same location to guard VIPs body cam available? That's a question. I don't know if we can answer that. What do you think?
I think I don't know.
Yeah. I think I have no clue either. I don't have an answer for that because I've never posed that question to them. Even if it did, they probably wouldn't know the answer, because every question that I've asked the LVMPD has been bounced around. There was a few that came through, and I remember I was on the phone with Shannon one time when we got a question back together. That was amazing, and we actually got the right answer. And that question was about the location of Melissa Ramirez, and that was important to me and Shannon. All right, so we got another question here. Let's see. All right. Okay. Michelle's typing in all caps. It doesn't look like it looks like a question. Oh, I'm on the wrong screen. Hang on. Ram. Boom. There's your question. You can see these, right, Ram, when they come up on your screen? Okay. So, Ram, can you do an interview with survivors and do a Q&A?
Sure. I could, but, you know, some of them don't especially like me at the moment.
Yeah.
Because of, unfairly, in my opinion, but.
Well, here's my take on, because I was kind of quiet when some of the recent activity happened, but you actually went through what I went through when I released the Melissa Ramirez video. When I released that, because this is different than your first film, you know, because this is a whole another level here. And when I released the Melissa Ramirez video, I got death threats. I got people calling me, telling me that if they ever see me, they'll do whatever. They tried to ruin my career. They were calling Catherine Lombardo on the phone and telling her a whole bunch of crap. They were doing all kinds of stuff just to go after me for releasing that video. And it took me 3 days to make that decision. It was not an easy decision. I sat around and just, you know, because I realized what was on that video, but I felt the importance of history kind of superseded anything that I could come up with to counter that.
That's exactly right. Journalism matters. Okay. Like, how are you able to actually keep people keep politicians and keep public, you know, police and all these other things, and military? How are you able to keep them accountable and make sure they're telling the truth? Yep. Journalism. Right. And so, you know, like, I think this idea that this event should just be forgotten and left behind, and the idea that, like, I'm some kind of a demon. I mean, I've been called like the devil in the last couple of days for actually making a movie about the 1 October Vegas mass shooting. And it's like, I mean, so if someone makes a documentary about Vietnam, if somebody makes a documentary about like Columbine, so is Michael Moore a demon, you know, for making like, we have to understand these things so they don't happen again. And one of the things I definitely resented the more I thought about it was the oversimplification of just like this idea that that nobody should do a film on this. I mean, this was the largest mass shooting in U.S. history, and I also resented the idea that that this woman who is some kind of an authority who gets to like dictate what should be done and what shouldn't, and like maybe I shouldn't go into all that.
Yeah, we'll leave that alone. I mean, I get it. I fully understand both sides of the issue. I get it, because this is it doesn't affect a person until it affects a person. So a story about Vietnam is not going to affect somebody that doesn't. So they're not going to even think that way. But then when something does affect them, then they're like, you shouldn't do this. This is my family member, or my this or my that. And we do understand it. And it's not an easy decision for us to make.
You know, the truth is, a lot of the survivors wanted to tell their story.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
They wanted to. And so, but we also dealt with some, like, the arrogance of some of these people in, like, deciding that this story shouldn't be told, and I'm going to get your movie buried and your page taken down because I'm the freaking queen and I get to decide. It's just unbelievable. What a schmuck this lady is. Yep. I mean, to think that she has that power and that she can, like, go after. I mean, and she got her butt handed to her pretty good for doing that. But anyway.
Yeah, we'll move on because we already kind of corrected that issue a little bit.
Well, you better not do it again.
Yeah, I agree. In all actuality, people should be able to understand that. Well, I can speak for me, and since you're on the show with me, you can say for you exactly how you feel about this. One of the things I can't stand is when people tell me that I'm profiting off the backs of the deaths of these people. You know personally how much money I've spent myself in doing this, and you don't pay me, no one's paid me or whatever to go out there and do this stuff. You have taken care of a hotel room 1 or 2 times, and you bought me coffee. I think that's about the extent.
$9 espressos, like, Mike is the king of, like, ordering the most expensive freaking, like, fancy kind of contraption coffee things you've ever seen. But
you have to learn another language just to order there. But the thing is I'm in this negative $40,000. So when I was being told that I was going to be sued for defamation, that means you would have to get some sort of award out of it. So you'd have to prove that I made money. So I'd be like,
that whole thing is a load of crap. Like, I'm going to sue you for defamation. Those are the words of a bully who's trying to bully people with the law. The problem that particular bully has is that you and I know the law, because, you know, I have a bachelor's in journalism. I've made film. I've been doing this for a while. And I know that if you tell the truth, you don't get sued for defamation.
Yeah. And I'm not even referring to her.
We opened up that can of worms. A lot of other people started sending me messages saying that person had bullied them with, I'm going to sue you. And that person even bullied some of the people whose families, who had family members who died. So the conclusion is that person's a bully, and they use the law to kind of, like, club people. But I'm not buying it, because if you tell the truth, you don't get sued. You don't. First of all, you generally don't even get sued, and nobody wins those lawsuits. So that person's a damn fool who likes to, like, club people with the law, and I'm not buying it. So
and the person I'm even referring to is not even the one you're thinking of at the moment. It was a different person. And the funny thing she said was after about 10 minutes of arguing with me, and she started realizing, oh, what, you no one's paid you? The lawyers didn't pay you? You didn't go do this or that or whatever? I'm like, nope, not at all. And then so you push that forward, and she's like, oh, well, I didn't know that, blah, blah, blah. And she starts backtracking. And then I said, but you're always over there on Jason Goodman's show. And I also remember seeing you.
People so much money. No, he doesn't pay people. Journalism is not a big payday. Like, okay, listen, Michael Moore is filthy rich, right?
Right.
You know, there's not a ton of other people making documentaries. Even documentaries that win Oscars do not. But Michael Moore's filthy rich, but there aren't too many other people who are, you know. And I think people see, like, the box office grosses from, like, films, you know, but those are films like Fast and the Furious and stuff, you know, that have name actors and $150 million, you know, campaign spends and stuff. So people get this misconception that there's all this money, and there is not. I mean, there just isn't. Like, documentary filmmakers don't make a lot of money, and I'm not. And so that whole argument is kind of ignorant. I mean, I don't blame people for thinking that, but they just don't know the reality of making documentaries. And I'd like to ask them how many rich documentary filmmakers they know.
Exactly.
You know?
All right. So somebody other than Thumper started asking questions, but I'll do Thumper's question real quick. How come the Melissa Ramirez parking lot was not labeled as a crime scene, and how come no one was held accountable or not for marketing it as a crime scene? That's $1 million question right there, because I've had that question since day one as to why they didn't mark it off as a crime scene. But the answer that I got, pseudo answer, was that because her body was moved over to Desert Rose, and they weren't able to determine that was where she was shot, they decided that that wouldn't be a crime scene. The problem with that answer is that we know where she was shot. So she was shot, then dragged over towards that area, and then dragged again over to where everyone saw it in the video, and then taken from there over to Desert Rose. So they messed up a lot of these crime scenes, but Melissa Ramirez was the farthest shot by Stephen Paddock, and the problem with that was she was so far outside the venue that they probably didn't follow a normal protocol to handle it, because there was originally it was going to be that the LVMPD would handle everything inside the venue and the FBI would handle what's outside, and then they switched it back and forth. So anyway, so that's kind of the answer there. But Thumper, I'm going to go on to another question here. Why didn't we mention Varson in the movie?
Varson was
the other deputy with Hendricks. So probably because there was not really that much controversy with Varson, and no one really knew that much about it. So it wasn't something that was a big controversy that we could piece together into the story we were trying to tell in the movie itself. So it wouldn't have really fit well. There's a lot of things that Ramsey can agree. This movie could have been a 5-6 hour movie.
Well, here's the thing. Everybody just thinks that, that they know so much, and that if they made this film, that it would be perfect because it had Varson in it or whatever, And the truth is, you have 100 hours of footage, and you've got to make an 85-minute movie. So a lot of things are going to be left on the cutting room floor. So I mean, it just wasn't necessary.
Okay, how many victims did Kathleen Lombardo actually represent, and why didn't Tucker interview Eglett? I'll do the first part, you do the second part. Okay, so the first part, how many victims did Kathleen Lombardo actually represent? I don't remember the exact number, but it was a decent number. It was in the hundreds or over 100. But she was just so everybody knows, Kathleen Lombardo was the first person to file a lawsuit in this case, period. And she filed it against Live Nation in Las Vegas. I believe it was on 11/15, just 5 days after we did the video on Tucker. And then this question, I guess, Ramsey, you can try to take a stab at it, is why didn't Tucker
interview? It seems like Robert Eglett and Tucker Carlson would have gotten along real well, given that they're both a-holes. So, I mean, it seems like they could sit around on their yacht and talk about being rich and be jerk-offs together. So I don't have an answer to that.
Yeah. Try to ask us questions that we would probably likely have the answer to. What's your biggest take on this? I mean, your movie's out. How do you feel? The movie's been out for a week now. So how do you feel overall about the response and what people are saying?
Very good. Very good. I'm surprised at how much press it's gotten, far more than what happened in Vegas, probably double or triple, I would say. It's been very well received.
Well, when your first article's in Forbes magazine, that's your first article, Forbes magazine. Who can say that?
Well, Film Threat didn't even. We couldn't get Film Threat to write a review about my first film. It was too and then so for them to give the movie a 10 out of 10, and that's actually, I mean, if you look at that particular article, they love the film.
Right. And they're normally pretty critical on stuff, and they. To get a 10 out of 10 from them is not a normal thing.
No, it's a very unusual occurrence. So, I mean, it's been flowing real well. I mean, what I think was most satisfying is that the people who were there that night, a lot of them have contacted me, sometimes even, with tears and stuff, and telling me that they feel like what they wanted, they felt like finally a movie was out there that kind of expressed what they went through and kind of got them, And so, I mean, that's what I've gotten mostly is from a lot of the people who were there, and some of whom are in my film, is thank you for making this film, because Vegas in general just wanted to sweep this under the rug and get it out of the way. I've been really pleased with the results. I mean, I can't be anything but appreciative and happy with them. What about you, Mike? What do you think?
I was amazed. I thought that maybe a couple of smaller places would pick it up and then it might bounce around a little bit, and then maybe somebody would hit it, a couple of big hits. But no, I'm astounded. It's just the reverse happened. It's like several of the big hitters picked it up, and I'm like,
I mean, the last week we probably had 30 articles about it.
Right. I felt like Nathan Johnson. I'm somebody. So yeah, you know, I'll tell you this: when I first met you, I had no clue who you are, what you've done, anything like that. I didn't like research you or anything like this. And we started talking. We hit it off pretty well right at the beginning.
Yeah.
Then when I saw one of your trailers, and I was like, oh my God, this person, he's making a movie, and this person's going to say this. I need to help this guy. And then when you listened to me, and you said, well, let me look into this. And that to me made all the difference in the world. Once I realized that you were truly out there trying to get it right, that just made everything from that point forward.
Isn't that our job?
Yes.
To get it right. Like in other words, to present what actually happened, not what's going to get us a lot of like Twitter followers that day.
Right.
And then a week later, it comes out that we're like full of it, you know?
Right.
So, yeah. I mean, I've seen a lot of that around this event.
Yeah.
You know,
and that's what's unfortunate is that the ones, it's so easy to come out with a conspiracy theory. You look at two disparate, unrelated items, and you find some little twinkling of a conduit between them. And you're like, helicopters, Saudis. All right, let's put these two together. Bill Gates owns Four Seasons. We can bring him in.
Bill Gates did it.
Yeah, let's just keep grabbing people and let's keep bringing stuff in here and then make some big convoluted mess. And then every 2 weeks, we're going to come out with a video and say, oh, this is the smoking gun. We cracked Vegas and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, wow, if your evidence is so damn good, so compelling and so impressive, how come I don't see it? And how come the lawyers don't have it? Why isn't someone taking you seriously?
Because they're too smart because they don't get it.
Yeah,
you know,
and that's unfortunate.
You know, I have it all figured out, and these people are too stupid to understand that Stephen Paddock was a Martian from Jupiter who is on Jupiter, right? You know, I mean, just the crap that we've heard over the last couple of years.
He would be called a Jupiterian, by the way.
Jupiterian, yeah.
Just thankful that he's not from Uranus. So, but you know, that I feel more sad. I have very little respect for people that perpetuate those type of stories, but there's really not a whole lot you can do about it. And sometimes, every now and then, there's a little inkling of truth in what they have put out. So I get that part. But what makes me sad is the numbers of people that follow in behind and blindly just eat this stuff up. And those ones.
What I thought. You were the guy who got us an interview with Eric Paddock, Stephen Paddock's brother, and that was probably my favorite part of the film because, meaning like that interview because it was illuminating. You know, you're actually hearing the guy who's in position to tell, like, closer to, who knew Stephen Paddock better than anybody in the world, kind of laying it out for you what really happened, which is quite different from MGM, who has a lot to lose by the truth getting out there, by their version of events. So, I mean, I thought, see, that's the kind of thing I'm interested in, is talking to the people who are closest to what's happening and figuring out what's really going on. Not trying to like shove some false agenda down people's throats that's going to get more Twitter followers or whatever. I don't have any respect for that kind of thing either.
Yeah, it is, and I try to be as respectful as possible when people have those situations come up, and I can say I'll even say the one case because a lot of people wondered why I didn't do it, and this will be the first time I've said this publicly. I was actually going to do a show where the person who was doing the show wanted me to come on and actually debunk a theory that was going around. And when asked to do the show, I didn't know who it was. I said, yeah, sure, I'll try to help you out. I was thinking it was like ninjas in the trees and this and that and all this other stuff. About 2 minutes before the show, I asked, who is the person? And they told me it was Renee Downs. And I said, I stopped right then. I said, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to go on and try, even though whatever that situation is, what she believes, if she believes it happened, then that's a truth for her. But I was not going to go on that show. I said, no, I'm not going to do this show. He says, well, I already got you. You should be coming on. I'm like, no, I'm not going to go on and do that to her or to anyone that was traumatized by this event in such a way that would
disparage your husband, who was a 23-year Marine or something like that, by saying that this didn't actually happen, even though I did investigate it. But I wasn't going to go on and directly to that person do that. So it's just everybody, a lot of people that ask me, says, why didn't I ever do that interview? That's why. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
So this is a good question here from Vegas 2 Shooters. Why do you think he had explosives and bomb-making material in his car? That's a good question. I mean, it could have been that he had a bigger plan than this, right?
Yeah, and there's a lot of tannerite, yeah, like 50 pounds or 100 pounds of tannerite. The thing about tannerite that a lot of people don't realize, it makes a very impressive sounding explosion, but visually, but it doesn't have a lot of power. So it wouldn't really cause a whole lot of damage. Somebody was saying that it would blow off the end of Mandalay Bay and destroy the floors. No, it wouldn't. Actually, it wouldn't even blow the windows out. It would probably just suck the air in the system and go down the HVAC system. That would be most likely.
Mike, I think you're exactly right, because I work in television and you know, it's a very visual thing in Hollywood. Like they use it for like explosions, you know, because it looks great. So it
looks great. No one gets hurt.
Yeah, like people like Michael Bay always have a lot of tannerite on hand for the big explosions and the Pearl Harbor or whatever it is. And so but it's mostly kind of a toothless tiger. It looks great visually, but it doesn't have a lot of power, and so you probably hit the nail squarely. It's just he just probably decided he could inflict more damage. That his best shot at inflicting maximum damage was to do what he did. That's my guess. I don't honestly have the answer to that. But I think
I used to sell tannerite, and we would always come up with crazy ways to use it, because we would never use it for the intended purpose because it's boring. So we decided to go out and do other crazy stuff with it. And the only thought that I could come up with was either it was going to be some form of distraction, because it can't actually do anything, but it can be a distraction if you put it somewhere and have something go and you have the police respond to that area. Whatever it was, that's the only thing I think that would make sense. Anything other than that really gets into a lot of stickier areas. So did you ever find a broken window in the night footage in your movie research? Ramsey, I'll leave that one for you, and then I'll come back on it.
I don't know what to say about that.
Yeah, I think Brian, if I'm not mistaken, okay, let me read this question specifically. Did you ever find a broken window in the night footage in your movie research? I'm not sure which night footage you're referring to. You're probably thinking of the CCTV.
You might be talking about the LVMPD body cam footage, like meaning when they entered Paddock's room. Is that what he's?
Yeah, let me see. He's probably Brian. Go ahead and tell us exactly what you mean by that, so I can better answer that. Let's see here. Why do you think he had explosives? But he did have a bomb-making materials in the car. The report, yeah, we know. He was saying that he had bomb-making material that was other than the tannerite, because he had the white bags that were there as well. So they were unlabeled. They basically it would be a similar mix that he was trying to attain that they did with the Morrow Building with Tim McVeigh when he blew up the side of the Morrow Building. So I get that part. But apparently either he had a different plan, or the plan changed slightly, or he had a plan A, plan B, if then kind of thing. If they do this, then I'll do that, and apparently that the explosives would have been too much physical hands-on for him to do. You can't really place explosives from a long distance away, but when you're shooting people with rifles, then you can control things. And a lot of people thought that was why he was shooting towards the tanks. He wasn't shooting at the tanks. I want to be very clear about that. And so when he was shooting towards the tanks, he was trying to hit a specific target that would cause a spray to come out so that the fuel would atomize, and then he would be able to make that explode.
Yeah, but Mike, don't you think, I mean, the one thing, like, everybody would tell you that Stephen was smart. And anybody who knows anything about fuel tanks would tell you it was kind of stupid to think that you could make I talked to former LVMPD cops, like in the film, they said the idea that you can get a fuel tank to explode is just asinine. Like, anybody who does 5 minutes of research knows that, those things are built to combat that.
Well, not only that,
right?
yeah, they're really thick, and there's 2 layers deep. And you were with somebody when they were shooting it as similar material. But the other thing is he could have shot at that tank all day long, and it never would have exploded, because you can take a match and literally drop it into that fuel, and it will not explode. It will not even ignite.
They're built for that. I mean, people who build fuel tanks are pretty smart people. I mean, they're not just gonna, oh yeah, let's make it so that somebody can throw a match on it and blow up,
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Let's see if we got another one there. Hit that one. I hit this before I read it. Is there any truth to the Saudi prince being here at the same time? Forgive me if you address this in the movie. I'll be watching as soon as it live. No, we don't address it in the movie, but Ramsey, what do you think about the Saudi prince or any Saudi connection here?
I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know. I'm just gonna take a pass on that one.
All right, I'll take this.
I've heard things both ways, but I never thought. Here, see, I'll be honest. Like, I never thought when a lot of stuff was thrown out there early on, and it was interesting. But once you get down that path, and so yes, at one time I intended to look into that, but as further down I got, I just kind of went no. And by the time we were interviewing Eric Paddock, Stephen Paddock's brother, and the thing that people need to understand about Eric Paddock, you ever met one of those people who just is incapable of BS and like if somebody's like BSing them, you just see this like look of impatience on their face, like just cut to the chase. Like Eric Paddock is one of those guys. Okay. Like he's incapable of just like, he's just not a liar. You can tell what he's telling you is true. Right. And so I knew when he kind of told us why his brother did this, that he was getting more and more angry about MGM jerking him around with comps and such. I started to feel like that was, closer to the truth than any Saudi opinion.
And then to keep in mind, Eric was interviewed for a total of 15 hours. That's it. And then they had for the BAU report, they hired 25 experts to come on there to do what they do. They weren't even necessarily FBI. This was just the FBI's BA unit, the Behavioral Analysis Unit, hiring an additional outside person. So you're 3 steps removed from FBI. You got FBI, BAU, then you've got these 25 people that was the Las Vegas review panel. That's what they called them. So they only reviewed the evidence that they had that had already been gathered. They did not have the ability to go out and actually ask questions and do things and things like that. So that to me was a slap in all of our faces, because they never even tried to really get to the answer. They just worked with the evidence that they had. And we're still waiting to this day on several other pieces of evidence that the FBI promised to put out and put in the vault or whatever they're going to do. But I'm still going to be digging into that aspect of it, because that's the part that interests me the most, is the true motive behind it, because there's another case I was working on that has a similar situation. And I think it's important that answer does get out there. And I think the FBI did us a huge disservice and a huge slap in the face by giving us a 2.5-page report, and that would be it. Let's see here.
Sorry, Mike, I'm having a little trouble hearing you right now.
Yeah, no problem. I can still hear me behind me, so my voice sounds the same. Let me get to the next question here. If I bypass your question on there, folks, that doesn't mean I'm bypassing it specifically. It just means that I just saw this one, so I'm trying to bounce around. Michelle asks, will Eric do an interview with survivors? No, I don't think that he will. The reason, it's not that Eric is not a social type person. He's not a socialite. So he picks and chooses his friends and anyone that he wants to, converse with carefully, because he doesn't have patience for any BS or any whatever. So his life is very focused on the few people that's important to him. And I guess in a roundabout way, I'm not really one of those people. I don't consider myself that close to him, but I am. A lot of people get on to me. They're like, how can you possibly be the friend of Eric Paddock, the brother of the shooter? I'm a bad person because I'm a friend of him, who they think he's a bad person because his brother did something. I say, and I don't see it that way. Plus, the other way I look at it is how else are we going to get this information if there wasn't people out there like myself that could talk to, Eric and be able to converse and find out things and go, holy crap, I didn't know that. That's important. Just like we did with the bump stock. We would not know this current lawsuit with the bump stock manufacturer is suing the victims, because they're basically suing what amounts to Stephen Paddock's estate. And then since they're suing the estate, they're suing the victims because the estate was already given to the victims. So any money that's taken out of that, whether it be through a jury award or through just paying for attorneys, comes right out of it. Oh, we lost Ram. Hopefully he'll come back in. And so that to me that's my next major thing to follow in this case. And Brian Shields, I'd like for you to take a stab at that. And anyone else that's researching this, is to look into that lawsuit with Jerry McConnell, Slide Fire Solutions suing them. That's probably Ramsey right there. Let me see if he can pop back in here. Stop that one. Oh, different person. All right, so hopefully he'll come back in. Let's go to another question here till we wait for Ramsey to come back. And if I skip your question, kind of let me know, because I'm not doing it on purpose. All right, so I'll see one. For MOVIR, for movie, did you read the LVMPD written statements regarding Paddock's brother communications with the LVMPD? I've read and talked to Eric extensively about that. Did I see them? Did I see statements, or did I talk to Eric about different statements? Yes, but I'm not sure what the question is. I think for the movie, we just brought Eric out. That footage was shot on October 24th of 2018. That's when that footage was acquired. Let's see here. I thought I saw ballistics. Okay. Mike, is there a ballistics report that would exist that hasn't been released? Yes, there is a ballistics report. Or do you think they didn't do one? No, they did the ballistics. I don't think they did the ballistics exactly like we think, because keep in mind that many of the victims who had a bullet, they kept the bullet. And my understanding is that several of those bullets that were kept were never analyzed. And Ramsey's back here. Let me add him back in.
Sorry, yeah, sound cut out for a second, so I shut off the, I shut everything down and turned it back on. I've always found that's the best way to fix anything.
Yep, it's a reboot. That's like they did this thing where GM versus Bill Gates. They were talking about if cars had followed the same path as computers, cars would get thousands of miles to the gallon, and they would cost $200-300. And then GM responded back, or Lee Iacocca or whoever it was, responds back and says, yeah, but people wouldn't have to get used to actually stopping their car and turning it off and turning it back on anytime there was a problem, and all these other issues that have that. If anyone wants to read that, it's quite funny, but I'm not gonna get in a comedy mood here. Let's see here. I just saw one over there. I got to use that screen normally.
So Marty Brown. For you, Mike.
Yeah, I did that one. The ballistics report already answered that one. You were not in here. I just saw the question. Oh, here we go. Okay. Did you guys ever find out who were the three ladies in Paddock's room, and were they interviewed? Where are those interviews? I have the answer if you don't. So,
go ahead.
Okay. So the three ladies that were registered to the room, we're not actually in the room. Those three ladies, and I have the last names and all that other good stuff. And me and Laura Loomer actually worked on that back when we were working together on it. Those interviews were done, but there was nothing that came out of it. And for some reason, those interviews have not been released yet. I have asked specifically for them, but to date, when I sent that FOIA request in, it was put on there after the date that they said they're going to put everything in the vault anyway. So I have no idea if we're ever going to see the actual answers to that. But my understanding that the three women were not physically in the room. They didn't go to the room or anything like that. That was a thing that was a mix up with the with how the reservations are done and how they overlap reservations. And I've seen that happen before, because a friend of mine actually is a travel agent, and I said, does this actually happen? They said it happens all the time.
Wait a minute, there's still travel agents on the planet?
Yeah, believe it or not. Still are.
I thought like Expedia, I thought that put them all out of business, man.
You would think.
Yeah.
Okay, I think this question is not a question we should answer. Let me read it, though. Do you have a running total of how many people have paid for and watched your documentary thus far? I don't think that's information that it's up to you if you want to release that, but I don't think that's information that.
It's just along the lines of like, oh, you're getting so rich with this documentary. Oh, yeah. It's just a bunch of like, that's not the reality of making documentaries for pretty much anyone, even people who win Academy Awards. So,
right.
No, I'm not in a mansion right now. And yeah, I don't know.
Exactly.
That'd be like you walking up and being like, so how much money did you make last week in your job? You know, like just, I don't know. Anyway.
Right. Yeah. It's just, yeah, I don't see that as, this isn't like a theatrical release where it's in the theaters and they have a running thing. If it ever gets to that, then you'll have those numbers. But I think
that's what it would have been, except for COVID. I mean, this is a theatrical release. I mean, that's why theatrical at home. Those are all places that book the film. The problem is they're closed because of COVID. So, I mean, it is a theatrical, but it's technically not. It's different, you know. But yeah, box office numbers become public when they go through the physical theaters themselves. But yeah.
Yeah, and one thing I want to go back to that ballistics report again, because I want to reiterate something that I want to be clear on. Somebody was, the ballistics report was done. Now, in the early throes of the investigation, keep in mind that all of the physical evidence was given to the FBI because it was just overwhelming, and the FBI took it back to either Quantico or to various labs that they have around the country to actually go and do the testing and stuff like this. So that was done. I would be willing to bet there is a lot of errors in that because some things went one direction and some went another. And if you don't have all the evidence of like kind together, then you're going to have different people doing those tests and the test results will be somewhat over the map. So I know this directly. So what I don't know is if they piece that together as a comprehensive single report that would explain the ballistics of what's going on. Now, a true ballistics report is supposed to put the shooter with the gun, with the bullet that hit that person. And that's the steps they have to go through. They have to prove that that bullet came from that gun and was fired by that person. Do we have that? Nope. And that's why we have even more conspiracy theories. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to be honest. I'm going to go get a Coke Zero right now in the fridge. I'll be right back.
All right. Bring me one.
All right.
Let's see here. All right, guys, get some questions for Ram here. While he's going to get his Coke Zero, can you ask? I think that would be probably. You guys ever find it? Let me pull back down here. Yep, I've got billions of dollars in my PayPal account. I really need to get that out of there. Let's see here. So, one of the bigger things, the bigger takes out of this, because I feel a lot more relaxed now, and there's going to be some things I'm going to reveal over the next few weeks. I'll put that on 5x5's website, so it's not questionable over on YouTube. But there's going to be there was another interview that was done with Eric that I will be releasing most of that. In fact, that if everyone that knows the in-serve incident, that's what I was doing when that happened, and everybody thought some other things was going on, and that's not the case. But anyway, so that's going to come out. Rand, what's your biggest take? I mean, the movie's out. Do you feel somewhat relaxed now that it's finally kind of over, or are you still in ramp up mode?
Man, I'll tell you what. My father was a very hyper guy, and I inherited that from him. I just don't, I'm just not a big relaxer in general. Like, no matter. I'm very rarely relaxed. Like I'm always like go,
Right.
And especially when like a lot of people want to do interviews and talk about the movie and stuff. And I always feel like, hey man, if people are interested enough, WGN's calling and people like Forbes are writing about the film, I can certainly take. So I never say no, actually. And I mean, actually today I got up at 5 a.m. to do a newscast in Washington, D.C. on Fox in Washington, D.C. Listen to this. So I get up at 5, and the producer was supposed to send me like a link to the Zoom link, and they sent me a link to like the Fox website or something, which is just like the regular homepage. So it's like I'm supposed to go on at like 5:20 a.m. this morning,
right?
LA time, which is 3:20 8:20 a.m. in Washington D.C. And so I'm like barely awake, and then I'm like scrambling, and then I got on the air like probably 10, like we got it up and running like 10 seconds before like they'd sent the link and stuff. But it was a little scary, like live television. Yeah. But yeah, so in other words, like I got up at 5 a.m. today to do an interview. Listen, it's a hell of a privilege to have people actually interested in what you're doing.
Right.
And I grew up 3,000 miles from Hollywood in a little town that nobody's ever heard of, working in a little community college TV station, which is where I learned to do what I do. And so, yeah, if people are going to pay attention to me and my work, the least I can do is like give them all my time and energy,
Right.
So, yeah, I'm not a good relaxer.
Yeah, I've been with you enough. I can second that motion. And what's cool is I think he, just so everybody knows, Ram would call me up and like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing today? I'm like, I don't know. What are we doing? And he was like, well, we need to go to Vegas. I'm like, okay. And he was like, really? I'm like, yeah. So he'd swing by, pick me up, and then boom, we're going to Vegas or whatever. And that to me, that's the way I am too, is I like, if something needs to be done, I want to get on it, because if I don't, something else will happen that'll distract me, and then I'll wish I did. And that's what I admired me about Ram, is that when something happened, it was like, let's go do it right now. It wasn't, well, we got to do scheduling and blah blah. No, it was.
No, man, I'm not that kind of guy. I'm a guy that's just like, I like to keep it lean, and I like to be nimble, and I like to like be able to just get up and go. And I mean, I think the reason that people do documentaries is because they're interested in information,
Right. Right.
I mean, personally, like when I am relaxing, usually I'm reading a nonfiction book. I just love information, and I love talking to experts. So, I think that's why I do documentaries. It's like my favorite thing to do is sit there and learn from somebody who's an expert in their field. And geez, even just like talking to all these cops and stuff. You and I know a hell of a lot more about law enforcement than we did before this movie.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's why, so anytime something veers in an interesting direction, as it tends to do when you're around. Even that trip we made to see Robin Hood 702 in San Diego. Just all crazy the stuff that happens, So when you're around, it tends to be pretty damn interesting. You end up driving on a freaking golf course.
That was fun. I wish we had that particular one on video, because that was a trip. Okay, so we've got Ram. Any correlation, do you believe, in the movie The Accountant with Ben Affleck? In other words, do you believe that the movie Ben Affleck was in, called The Accountant, had any bearing on anything that has to do with the MO or anything like that? There's several movies that are out there that people have tried to tie. Yeah. You haven't seen Accountant?
No, I haven't seen The Accountant.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either. All right, so I got Brian Shields asking, I just saw it. Where is it? I'll just read that one. Okay, so Brian Shields asks, what's up with Campos, MGM Security, and LVMPD all talking about pellets on the night of the shooting? What do you think about that? Because during the shooting, he would say, he actually said that he thought he was shot with a pellet, and that created, well after the shooting, a lot of people were going, well, you're shot with a pellet. It wasn't even shot with a real bullet and all this other stuff. And so I'm not sure. The problem I have with it is that people put too much into that. Like it was really a big deal that someone used a word that's not common to be used. And I just think that somebody took it and ran with it. But I really don't think much of it.
Well, here's the thing. All hell broke loose that night.
Yep.
Okay. So all hell broke loose. Nobody anticipated this. And but here's the thing, though. I think the people at Route 91 deserve all the benefit of it. And that's why I say, when people criticize, like I remember Corey, the taxi driver that night, who's awesome and is a good friend of mine and yours, she was telling me that people watched her video and were like, why didn't you do this? And why didn't you do that? And if I were you, I would have done this and gone over there and saved these. And it's like, oh, really? So you have experience with like mass shootings where 58 people are killed. You know, it's like all hell broke loose that night. You know, so weird things happen, but not all those weird things were a conspiracy. And when all hell breaks loose, you know, people just it's hard to predict what's going to happen.
Yeah,
you know?
and a lot of the very beginning of this for me was chasing down. Once I started bringing evidence directly to the attorneys, I felt like I really need to be on the ball here. I really can't bring just some hearsay crap or whatever because it's sensational. And so I would vet everybody before I would even, you know, get that information or what have you. And then sometimes, man, I went down a couple rabbit holes. But there was a few times that you actually bring something to the table that you didn't think was really that big of a deal, and it turned out to be fairly important because someone else had something similar on the other side. But here's a question we got: what about all the reports of people saying they heard Paddock talking about a terrorist act? I'll learn how to say it in a minute. Terrorist act at Mandalay Bay. There was a lot of
we know somebody who claims that they were at a blackjack table.
Yeah.
With Paddock, and that he said that he was gonna, you know, and that Paddock purportedly said that he was gonna like get his revenge or whatever. And listen, this theory was very interesting.
It was,
but that doesn't mean that it actually happened. And so when we sat down and talked with Eric Paddock, who knows Stephen better than anyone in the world, and Eric would talk about, you know, when we were like having sushi and fixing up the properties that we own, we just kind of BS and stuff. And he described Stephen Paddock's nature. And Stephen Paddock was a very even-keeled individual. Okay, so he wasn't one to just shout or lose his temper. And so, I mean, didn't Eric say that he's never really heard Steve lose, like just shout? And so this person at the blackjack table said like, that Stephen like got pissed off or something, and just like because he was losing, and then all of a sudden said like, you know, see you over there, windows, and I mean it's a very interesting kind of fanciful story, but it wasn't consistent with. I believe Stephen Paddock's brother over anybody else.
Yeah, I do too. And in regards to the person we're speaking about, I honestly believe he believes that either occurred or maybe parts of it did, and he's mixed some memories in with it or whatever. I don't know. The problem I was having is that we were trying to pin down the date. If we could have just got the date right with him being there.
We're trying to verify that it happened. We're trying to get like, and that, so that was really where that fell apart, is we couldn't verify. And so, I mean, originally when he said this, we thought we looked into it, but then by the time we actually sat down with Eric Paddock, and he just shook his head and said, I mean, there's just some things some people aren't going to do, right?
Right.
You know? Like, so anyway, that's all.
All right. So next thing here, do you think Paddock actually shot down the hallway, or what hit Campos? Basically, you know, there's some people that think that there were no shots fired down the hallway, the way the doors look. I mean, there's all these, you know, everybody's an expert at home and stuff, and I get it because I do the same thing. If I'm not an expert in a field, I'll start learning about it just enough so I can think that I'm making a decent decision. But as far as Paddock shooting down the hallway, yes, I believe he did, because there was no one else in a position to have done those shots. But we've got another one right behind that. Let's see here. Okay. Security guards at Mandalay Bay report a Saudi prince at the Four Seasons. And what are your thoughts on the strobe light? Security said it's weird because the strobe light was pointing outward. There was two strobes, one on the 4th floor and one on the 10th. That I know about. What do you think, Ram, about the security guards at Mandalay Bay reporting Saudi prince was at the Four Seasons?
I don't have thoughts on that.
Yeah.
I don't want to like BS people. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I'll say this, that when I was, you know, in the film, in Money Machine, you know, we're driving around with Corey, the cab driver that night, whose footage became so crucial and instrumental. And I remember, you'll see in the film, I'm driving with her in the cab as we filmed the segments from Money Machine, because we wanted to get as close to like what she saw and felt that night And I remember she looked up, like she showed me the footage of the strobe light was on the 4th floor, and she told me that originally she thought those were where the shots were coming from.
Yep.
And
And
so
I have the answer on video too of what those strobes are. Actually, the guy that let me get the video footage for with Melissa Ramirez, Sean, who runs the business called American High Rise, which is the window washers business that I got the security footage from. He told me that the strobe on that floor will run for days. Sometimes because it aims outward, and when they're during the day, the people that clean up and stuff, they don't even know it's really on, and so they forget to turn it off. So it just keeps flashing, and it's inside a room that they use for wedding receptions. And yeah, and that's what that strobe is, and that's why it was on. And people that were at the concert remembered seeing it like the day before, like for 3 days. It was on like the whole time. So a lot of people were like, they kind of knew about it. But of course, when Corey comes driving around the corner and she hears da 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 da, and she looks up and you see that almost in her video, it's almost the exact same time. So the timing was pretty close to the shot. So yeah, I could see how someone would think that, but obviously that wasn't the case. What are your thoughts on the strobe light? Security said it was weird because strobe light was pointing outward. That's why it was pointing outward. For some reason, they turned around. I don't know why. As far as the Saudi prince thing, I researched. There's really just nothing to the Saudi connection at all. There's a lot of weird things that happened. Like 2 weeks before, you had the Saudi Air Force was there training on helicopters at Nellis, and then of course people think helicopters may be involved. All these different things that people put together. But we just, Ram and I, Ramsey doesn't get as much into the research as say I do, because that's kind of what I was supposed to do. He's got to do the movie. But he has to research it too. But at the same time, I wouldn't have even brought any of this information out because I couldn't confirm one thing, nothing, like literally not one thing I could ever confirm. I could confirm that someone was somewhere, but I couldn't confirm that there was any connection with anything else. Or just
well, on this subject though, remember Mike, there was the talk about Steve went to Dubai or something. So people were trying to find a terrorist connection, right?
Yep.
And then remember when we actually sat down with Eric Paddock, his brother, and he said, yeah, he's like, he went to Dubai because he was trying to get a bunch of frequent flyer points or something to get some comp. And he said, and remember, and Eric said, for Steve, sitting on the airplane watching a movie is the same as being at home. So he went to Dubai, And when Eric Paddock says that, I believe it.
Yeah.
So
there's no reason to doubt him. Where would that come from if you tried to make something like that up? And plus, Eric would say things like how the thing about trying early on in the investigation, once I realized I need to try to talk to Eric, and I reached out to him and we didn't connect or whatever, but then he saw me do the wind video where I went through the wind, and he cracked up and he thought that was I was his kind of guy. If I was willing to take that,
pivotal moment, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that was the moment that he said, "Okay, I'm done with RJ, and I'll, review journal. I want to go with this guy." So we started talking. But my main goal in the beginning was really just to get information on Steve as much as I could. But I knew if I pressed that issue, because he's Eric's eccentric. He's not easy to talk to. If you can't talk to him on his level, you're not really going to get far. And so it was a balancing act of trying to learn about what was going on behind the scenes about Steve and stuff like this. And also I ended up liking the guy. I mean, it's like, he's really cool. And I think you did too, Ram.
Well, here's the thing about Eric Paddock. I mean, some of the things, like people just decide I think it's really unfair to just be like, oh, your brother's a mass murderer, so you're evil and all this.
Right.
I mean, here's the facts about Eric Paddock. Okay, after this happened, the reason he came out to Vegas was to deal with the estate and to make sure that everything went to the victims. And there was things that a lot of things people don't know is like they found a ticket for a cash out ticket for over $30,000 in Stephen Paddock's hotel room.
Yep.
I mean, as his brother, he could have just grabbed, but Eric instead, I mean, that got cash and given to the victims. Yep. So, I mean, frankly, Eric Paddock did I would say he handled that whole thing with more integrity than Steve Sissy Quack did with Vegas Strong, where, I mean, at least that money actually got to the victims.
Yeah.
Whereas Sissy Quack was jumping in front of cameras and trying to get his face time so he could become governor. And what about the people losing their houses and who can't pay their cars? And I talked to a girl who had her freaking car repossessed, And a lot of the 1 October survivors will tell you, they're sitting there going, where's the money? What is this con?
Right.
But then you also had like all these people so the Vegas Strong thing, quite frankly, got pretty damn annoying because it was glib garbage. They didn't mean a word of it. It was about them. And it was also interesting. They had this ready. Okay. So right after this happened, Vegas Strong was immediately rolled out. It was based on the Boston.
Yeah. Boston Strong. Right? Yep. It's the exact same thing. It's almost like a cookie cutter thing.
Yeah. But I mean, it's like I firmly believe that Sissy Quack was in there going, oh, okay, here it is. National exposure. I mean, this was the biggest story of the year for like a week, Every camera in America was in Vegas covering this. And it was clever what he did, but it wasn't right in my opinion.
All right.
And just ask the survivors, if you want to like cut through the crap and the propaganda in Vegas, just walk up to the survivors, look them in the eye and go, what do you think of Steve Sissy Quack or Sisolak? Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. In the very beginning, I think I said this earlier, I didn't really have an opinion either way of him, but as things went on and I talked to 2 survivors, both of which were needing money at the time. And that there's one that was made a promise, and this is this isn't in the movie. This is totally separate from the movie. One was made a promise and a promise and a promise, and then eventually just kind of gave up on it. And then another one had a similar situation. But the thing about these organizations that are set up, and I don't want to talk bad about them because in overall, most of them do a pretty good job of what they do, but there's just so much opportunity to either waste funds or not do it right, or these people are doing it for their first time because they're trying to do the right thing and they just really don't know what they're doing. And then someone comes in and screws it up and it hurts them too. So the true intentions of what people are, or why people are doing something, is what drives me to figure them out. Sissiquack, Sheriff Lombardo, 2 people to set up a GoFundMe account for the Vegas Strong thing. They should know what they're doing. And they should have known that once they set that up and it hit like almost $12 million, that they should have paid some of those funds out to people. That
here's my contention. My contention is that they never cared about that. You said they should know what they're doing, but that was meaning that know enough to get the funds to the victims. It's my belief that Sissy Quack didn't care enough about them.
I agree. I agree at this point, but back then I didn't know.
Now, listen, a lot of people have said that like Sissy Quack like embezzled the funds or whatever, or where's the money or whatever. I'm not going to go that far. Steve Sissy Quack has a lot of money. I don't believe that Vegas Strong was something where he was like taking the money. I believe it was an opportunity to get face time. Steve Sissy Quack has millions of dollars, but what he didn't have at that point was, he wasn't the freaking governor, and he wanted to be. And so he went up, he went out there and said Vegas Strong and all this, and you look at every press conference, there he is just in the background going. I mean, it was so awkward. I mean,
tragedy.
I went like the audience about that. Weren't those press conferences just plain strange? Because you're looking at Sissy Quack going, what the hell is this guy doing there? He wasn't the governor at that point. He was trying to be like, why is this county commissioner and why is Sheriff Joe Lombardo allowing these kind of games and this unprofessional crap? Like, why did 1 October become an opportunity for these guys to grandstand for their campaign?
Right.
It's just garbage.
Yeah. And you got to wonder, when did they? Yeah, you got to wonder at what point did they go, wow, this might be a good point for me to step off and shoot for governor or whatever. And
he didn't waste any time.
You couldn't fit that many people in the back. That back row of people is like, okay, how many people can we possibly put on the stage? And it was, everybody was there. It was like everybody that needed to be reelected was there.
Like adjusting their ties, and it was just it was freaking scumbag of palooza out there. Just like, and just these phony politicians. You know, I mean, God, I'm glad I don't have to be in a room with those phony.
what people didn't see is once those were over and the people start dispersing and going around, and you just walking around, people don't, because I didn't have a huge camera with me or whatever, but you still hear them talk. And that was one of the things I like to do, is get near people and just see what they're talking about. And some of these conversations were just like, they did nothing. If you walk out of a press conference where you're talking about this tragic event, and you go outside and then you're talking about baseball and all this other, it just nothing phases these people. And then when the cameras were off, they were gone.
Right. And then, but the other thing you saw was like the mayor with the IQ of 2, Carolyn Goodman, getting out there like I remember, she had to get her FaceTime or whatever and bring her platitudes and trite cliches to the table. And I remember one of the things she said is, this does not represent, Las Vegas. Oh, really? No crap. Really? Like a guy shooting up a freaking concert. Of course, that's not something that Vegas endorses, but yeah, anyway, I don't know where I was going with that, other than that that was kind of Captain Obvious taking center stage there. And,
right.
And the other thing is like, man, wow, I mean, I'll lay off.
All right, I'm going to bounce around a couple of these questions. If they're too ambiguous or not specific to something that we should really know about for the movie, then it's going to be real hard for us to do it, because I'm trying to get questions that are geared towards Ramsey. This one actually says Ramsey, so let's see here. For Ramsey, did you rely on Turber for your doc research? Doc research? That's one question. And then who personally viewed the body cam and social media and written release footage for the doc?
I mean, it was a collaboration, but I'm the guy who edited every frame of the movie. I'm an editor. I'm in the Editors Guild, and that's how I got my start, was putting footage together. I'm the guy who takes the 500 hours of footage and whittles it down into the half-hour TV show. That's what I started out doing. And so, I mean, the truth is, both of our eyes were all over that body cam footage. Now, I can't say I saw every frame of it, but I saw a hell of a lot of it.
Yeah, and I think there was only a couple things I pointed. I would send you something and give you a timestamp of, say, look at that. To answer the first part,
movies are a collaboration. They're not about one guy doing everything,
Right. And just to answer the first part kind of directly, for Ramsey, did you rely on Turber for your doc research? Actually, Ramsey relied on not really relied on, but a lot of people brought information to him. I wasn't the only one.
The executive in charge of Survivor Affairs was a regular supplier of information, and Brian, actually, you know who I'm talking about, because you and I used to be Facebook friends until the executive in charge of Survivor Affairs actually rattled you one day, and then he decided it was my fault. And then but it wasn't. I no longer speak to that person. You have to understand, like, when you're doing stuff like this, a lot of conspiracy theories and people like reach out to you, and he was just one of those. So I mean, just between me and you, I think you always kind of put that on me, that somebody I know threatened you. I barely knew that guy. Just FYI.
Right, and it's a very touchy, difficult situation, because when someone from another person's perspective is doing something great and wonderful, which they are. I mean, I'm not going to take that away, but then some of the other things that happen, I lost. I'm not even going to go there. We'll just leave that one alone. Okay. Question: why can nobody find any footage of muzzle flash from room 135? And can you explain how you think he kept the flash concealed or still was aiming? We do have muzzle flash. I'll actually upload it while we're doing this. I can actually get it up pretty quick so you can see it. But I think the problem, Ramsey knows this as well as I do, the angle of a camera from a distance, just like why we don't see stars when you're on the moon in the footage, because the way the cameras work. Ramsey knows a lot about that, or at least to a degree. It's just,
why can nobody find any footage of the muzzle flash?
Yeah, and I'm going to upload the muzzle flash right now so people can see it. So you go ahead and take a stab at that one.
I'm having trouble hearing.
You can't hear me?
Now. Yeah, what happened is my phone this is what happened last time too. My phone rang, and so I can't really hear you. So I'm trying to read the question.
Okay. So when your phone rings, it takes it off.
Gotcha. The muzzle flash in room 135. Can you explain? I mean, I don't know I can't say that I'm definitively right about this, but I will say that I think it's just because you're talking about a very, very small thing happening. I mean, right, Turber? I mean, a muzzle flash. This is maybe what, like 3 inches in diameter, going out a window. I mean, is there? Oh, and the other thing is that the camera above Paddock's room was out that night, right?
Right.
Or one of the mini cameras that Mandalay Bay didn't have operational, that were broken, that didn't get fixed.
Exactly. Well, there is muzzle flash footage. There's a couple that catch like a flash here or there. There's one. The only video that I can say is definitive, that's really quite clear, is the Robert Goodwin video. That video does show muzzle flash, or at least the spray from the muzzle flash coming out, and the gas is coming out. So I'll upload that and slow it down so you guys can see it. I've enhanced it, so all I did was change contrast and brightness and stuff so you can see it. But yeah, I can sit here and say with 100% of surety that it's legitimate footage. It's not doctored or whatever. But why that guy sat on that footage for so long, that I don't know. I would like to meet the guy or find out what his story is. But sometimes people get footage and they try to shop that footage. And I'm not saying that's what happened here, but some people get footage, they try to shop it, no one buys it, and they just sit on it. Or the guy may have had some legal issues and decided not to put his name out there or whatever. But the footage is there. It's Robert Goodwin, I believe is his name. And I'll try to upload it in the background here in a minute. Let's see here. So Vegas 2 shooter, hold me to that, and I'll get that video uploaded. Let's see here. It says Ramsey. Oh, did I lose Ramsey again? Yeah, he'll come back in. Let's see here. Yeah, I'll upload that video here in just a second here. No problem, Brian. I don't mind answering your questions, and I promise I'll come troll your channel as soon as possible. But I never really. I think one of the first interactions that you and I had, Brian, I was actually legitimately trying to help you, and I felt like what I got back. If you go back and look at the very first interchange you and I had on your channel, I felt like I was there to help, and then something happened, and I don't know, maybe it was a bad day or something, and then from that day forward, everything kind of went sideways or whatever. But I don't have any hard feelings towards you or anything like that. I think sometimes it's I look at the humor side of things. I don't. Even in a terrible tragedy situation like this, people look at me sometimes, they go, how can you find humor in this? It's because I have to. Otherwise, with all the shit that I see, with the pedophile things I do, chasing these guys, and you have to actually see what they're doing, murders, rapes, all these different cases I get involved with periodically. The only steam I can let off is my humorous side. And sometimes I'm too humorous, as a certain person in here probably knows where I do it. I'm too funny too long. Let me get Ram back in here. There he is. Boom.
Yeah, I'm 3% on my phone here, so I'll be peacing out here pretty soon. Here.
Yeah, no problem. I'll carry the stick. Says Ramsey, question: why do you think they turned off all those cameras the night of the shooting, according to your movie?
Ooh, boy,
that's a loaded question right there.
Well, I mean, they're certainly not going to tell you. We tried to find out.
Yep. I think the problem here is I don't think they specifically turned off the cameras for that night. I don't think that's a fair assessment. I think the bigger question is why did they allow upwards of 200 cameras? I don't know the exact count. It could be less than 200, could be over 200, but whatever that count is, it's a large amount of cameras. They're non-gaming cameras, so they don't have
the LVMPD, aren't they?
Huh?
I think they're talking about the LVMPD turning their cameras off.
Those cameras. Oh, my bad. Yeah, okay.
And that's a very good question.
That's a really
we're trying to figure that out, because you have a lot of that body cam footage.
Yep.
The Las Vegas Free Journal were the first ones to report that. It was pretty interesting. Like they were basically they're getting ready. The LVMPD is getting assembled and they're getting ready to go in, and they're like, cameras off, make sure your cameras are off.
Right.
Yeah. Why?
Well, here's part of that answer, because I used to sell Taser. I don't know if anybody knows this. I owned a business called World of Weapons. I used to be a distributor for Taser. Before Taser got into the body-worn cameras, we were carrying a weird brand of whatever it was. This piece of crap was what it was. But during the training, whenever they go into a SWAT situation and the officers are there, they do not record those instances of them talking about what they're about to do, because that would reveal police tactics. And that is a reason. That's also why they tell cameras not to aim a certain way if they're filming a live, footage of an event happening and stuff like that. So that's part of the possible answer, because since we don't have an answer, I'm just going to give you another possible answer. Whether or not it's partly correct or not, we don't know, because they've never responded to it.
I want to say something about this, because I did learn something really interesting. Actually, a guy was kind of caught on camera saying this one time, a guy I used to work with, and he probably wished he wasn't, but he was basically telling me that sometimes like SWAT teams will actually employ like an outside vendor, okay, who's not part of the police department to do the camera work. And the reason for that is that way it only goes one way, okay? Meaning that if the footage is going to show that the shooting was justified, then they'll supply the footage. But this person, and I have a recording of this, they told me that if it was damning, if it went the other way, where they was liable, it's a private citizen. They're not part, or it's a citizen who's like a volunteer. They're not part of the department. And so they can kind of make that footage go away.
Yeah, that makes you went sideways on us. Yeah, that makes sense as well. I think there's a multitude of reasons as to why that would occur. That one makes sense. I think the one I said makes a little sense. But what doesn't make sense is the way in which they did it. It was just like, okay, everybody, and then they release this footage and we don't get any explanation with it. No one came out and said, today we're going to release this footage and you're going to see this, and this may seem controversial, so let us explain to you what this is. We never got any of that. And that would make sense, and then they release, some videos that we could actually read the officers texting, why they were texting. We could zoom in and actually see what they were saying, who they were talking to. And they were supposed to cloud that out. But it was almost like we had someone inside, their facility who was making these releases of this body-worn camera footage. And they were like, yeah, I'm not going to fuzz this one out so, you guys can see it. When I got that, I was like, wait a second, this guy's like, the fuzzy thing is not even near the phone. So there was some other crazy stuff going on. I don't know what, but we'll see. I'm uploading the video right now, so I'm going to let it upload, and I'm not going to add a whole bunch of description to it. So we'll just let it go. And as soon as it uploads, I'll play that for you as well. And let me get to some questions. Say, Ramsey and Turber, thank you guys so much for the time and effort you put into the documentary. Thank you, Vegas 2 Shooters. I appreciate that. And Ramsey went sideways and his phone died out. Okay, well, this is a question for Ramsey, but he's not here, so I get to answer. I'm going to pretend I'm him. Ramsey, what is the one question you wish you could have answered that you were not able to figure out? If that question was posed my direction, I'm not going to answer for Ramsey, but because his phone was at 2% or whatever it was. The question of motive, of the clear answer as to why, something a little bit more substantial, that's the question I wish we could answer, because that's always the question, is why, what can we do to prevent this? And we always think in hindsight. And so LVMPD made a whole bunch of changes after the shooting, even though they were trained on all of this stuff 6 months previous to the shooting. Those are the kind of knee-jerk reactions that always make me mad, because Las Vegas has been a #1 target for terrorists for years and years and years. They should have been prepared. Even though this wasn't a terrorist act, the act was so close to what a terrorist act could have been that they should have been able to handle this a whole lot better. And for it to take them that long to get to the room, and I have zero respect for, don't get me wrong, Officer Hendricks was probably a decent guy and he just screwed up, and I get it. People should have empathy for people that screw up, but not this guy, to go back on the job.
No, once you're done, you're out. You know, you move and the next guy goes. You have to, if you know that you are chickening out, then you need to have a system in place that the next person takes over immediately. It'd be the same thing if you're going to war and the guy beside you gets shot, then and you're the next in command, you just immediately take over and go, and you just keep going until you alleviate, get rid of the threat. And that didn't happen. So let me go there. I should have put the screen on this side so I wouldn't have to look back over this way. Yes, center of gravity. That is correct. Exactly. You want to come on here? I'll send you a link. So a couple of situations that come up periodically whenever you're doing this. You meet a lot of people, and in the beginning you meet people, and no one knows where your relationships are going to go, and that's why I'm a hard person to approach sometimes. And the people that are my close friends, they know how dear they are to me, and anyone that's an acquaintance of mine knows that I truly do care. A lot of people question, how could you do this or do that or whatever. I do this because I care. I do this because I want people to know the truth. I have a certain set of skills that I can go out and acquire things that maybe someone, obviously in this case, several people couldn't get. And I wanted to do that so that questions could be answered. And my whole goal was, at the end of it, I hope that some questions that otherwise wouldn't have been answered were answered, whether or not it was through me or someone I helped or anyone that did this investigation on their own, because this event created a lot of researchers and a lot of people that came out, just normal everyday people that would come out, and some had really good eyes for finding stuff. And then, some would find something, and I don't know, there's some conspiratorial mindsets going on. And even that didn't bother me in the beginning. It only bothered me in certain instances where I was dragged into it. But for the most part, I just think it's important that anytime something like this happens, that more people get involved in trying to find out what happened, not necessarily going out and presenting alternate theories and then and things that you can't back up. I'm not talking about that, but this actually makes you a better person. When you research these things, you start to see a different aspect, and everything that you're looking at in life has a different perspective. And for some, for myself, it's not a good thing, because my whole life is based on doing the stuff that I do, and it never works well for relationships, I can tell you that. But maybe now it'd be better because I'm not like actively involved in it, but still it's a pain in the ass. So it does cost a lot. Let's see here. All right, let's get him. I'm going to put this actual invite out there. We'll see if anyone abuses it. Let's see here. All right, grab this real quick. And, wrong screen. I got to do it with the right keyboard. There you go. We can have up to 10 people in here from my understanding. So anyone wants to come on board, there's your link. Come on in, and we will have a chit chat. And I think I'll go until about 7, and then because InServe starts at 7, and I'll let him come on board. But anybody that wants to come in, there's only a couple of people I won't let in, but come on board. Roger, you're welcome to come in too. I know you'd asked earlier. And keep asking questions, guys. You don't have to stop asking questions. I'll try to answer them as best I can. And if I don't know the answer, I'll let you know. If either I don't know the answer, or if I don't have enough information to even make an informed guess at it. Because sometimes I'll answer questions that I haven't researched, but I have enough working knowledge sometimes to give you something. I try to, at least. All right. Let's see here. I'm trying to see. See what Jeff says here.
A lot of experts, they say no one actually knows whether or not they'll run towards gunfire until they're faced with it. That's a very true statement. I know what my answer is. And welcome to the show, Secrets, Center of Gravity. How you doing, sir?
Well, thank you, sir. I hope you're doing well. I got here late. I didn't get notified, or I was busy not looking for notifications, but got here late, so I've just been listening for the last few minutes. But I've got some good questions and all kind of good subject flowing here, so appreciate you letting me come on, and I'm just going to let you get back to what you're saying and see where it takes us.
Well, I mean, now have you? I'm guessing you haven't seen Money Machine yet, correct?
I have not. I don't know what happened this week, but I got busy sweating my butt off in one hell of a hot state of Texas here. It is hot.
I got you. All right, I'm gonna play this video here because a lot of people or somebody's asking about muzzle flash. So I'm gonna go to. I just uploaded this, so it's doesn't have any description or anything to it. And I'm gonna pull it in here. Hold tight as I pull this thing here. I'm gonna stop that screen. Start screen. Tab. Muzzle flash. Share audio this time. Share. Here we go. Okay, so that should take over. And booyah. And I'll play it here in a second. I'm going to make the screen larger. Give me just a second. If I can find my mouse, which is probably on the TV behind me. There it is. Okay, go full screen. There we go. And click. All right, so this is going to be your muzzle flash. Now, the first part of this is the original Robert Goodwin video. And then what I did is I picked it up and I enhanced it so you could see it a bit better because it is kind of difficult to see. So I'm going to hit play here. And here we go. I don't know why it's playing in mobile mode, but hang on just a second. I'm trying to get it out of that mode. All right, so right here, what you'll see is I try to stabilize it a little bit, but what you're going to see is the puffs coming out from the building, and the wind is going to the left. So you'll see the puffs come out, and then that pushes around the corner of the building, and you'll actually see the reflection of the muzzle flash inside the puffs. So this is the only footage that I can say is definitive muzzle flash, or at least proof that the muzzle was in that particular location. It's the only one I have that I could actually sit on a witness stand and say, yeah, this is legit. And there are other videos that are out there that do show muzzle flash, but this is clear. This to me is conclusive. I don't have. I've tested the video. I've looked at it. I've compared the sounds. I've compared everything, and it is from that night. And there's no other way that this footage could exist if it wasn't real. And it's not special effects. But the video itself is not of great quality. I did slow it down. But this is when this video came out, this was almost like the holy grail of when this video came out, of all of the stuff we were looking for. Is me, Burgundy, and Morphonius, and I mean just everybody. We were looking for something. I'll let it play one more time and I'll let it go. But even in the original footage, you can see that puff right there. That's your, not your flash, but that's the gases coming out of the weapon, and then you can see the reflection back at it. Now I stabilize it and then slow it down. And for some of you, you won't see this. You could say that that's a curtain. Somebody told me it was a curtain. Somebody says this or that. But I've looked at quite a few of these videos. I'm telling you definitively, I would sit on a witness stand and tell you that is it. So anyway, that's that there. What do you think of that there, Secrets?
I had that thought there for a brief period that it was a curtain as well, flapping outward, and then realized that I was tripping, and definitely think it's smoke illuminating as it pours out, and it would make sense to me that the airflow coming in through the 134 and out through the 135 would cause the smoke to draft that direction. Even though we're talking about relatively low smoke ammo, I think you've got a couple dynamics playing into that. I feel like, and I want to know what you think. I think there is a curtain involved there. I can't figure out how the burn marks would get on the curtain other than the heat of the muzzle blast, and I felt like the curtain was in place as a part of his concealment efforts.
Mm-hmm.
Have you reached a firm decision on what you think about that?
Well, I don't see any curtain in this particular footage. As far as what I'm seeing is the gas is coming out. Now, as far as the burn marks on the curtains, I did go over that. And I believe some of them are from the shell casings and some of them are from him laying a weapon down and leaning it against that pillar that was in there that had the curtain was kind of wrapped around it. So I definitely believe that is the source of those burn marks, would be either the barrel when he laid the rifle against it, or the actual shell casings. Now, keep in mind the shells eject one direction, so to get them to go another direction doesn't make a lot of sense. So it depends on which way the shells are ejecting to make that make sense. Roger, what do you think? Roger.
One last thing before Roger gets going there.
Yeah.
I just felt, obviously the column worked to his advantage in terms of concealment and in terms of standing back 5 feet or so from the window. And then when I saw the burn marks, I thought, as cowardly as this act was, the idea of at least leaving one layer of curtain there to fire through would make sense. And once you get the general direction figured out in terms of where you're aiming into the hole that you've created in the window, it seems like you're shooting in the general direction of the crowd. It's not too hard to do, and it just wouldn't surprise me if he left some curtain in the way there. I don't think it was flapping out the window, no, but I think that he may have been firing through the curtain at times, or maybe the entire time. I don't know. I haven't. That's why I asked what you thought, because it's just something that's been on my mind for a long time.
Yeah, I honestly don't think he fired through the curtain without having a visual on the field. I think the curtains were moved to the side and he was just standing further back in the room. And what I did when I was in room 32219, I was on the same floor, same level, same everything, same, other than him, it would have been the comparison to 134. But I did back up and tried to, I held out a weapon that would be, or held out what would be the appearance of a weapon, to see how far back I'd have to go before I'd lose angle on that area. Of course, he's on the other side of the building. I could bring it up in a different program, but and it's far enough back to where just being that far back would shield the flash part. But the gases, whenever you shoot AR-15 or any rifle, you're pushing a lot of gas down that barrel. Now you got muzzle brakes and you got other things at the end of the barrel that generally have the gases go off different directions. But you still have a large amount of gas that's going to go straight forward. And especially when you're continually putting bullets down range through that same cloud of smoke. So it's just like blowing smoke rings. If you blow a smoke ring out of your mouth and you don't blow any more, that one's going to go out and go wherever it goes. But if you continuously blow smoke rings, you're going to have a trail of smoke rings going further and further out. And that's what happens when you're pushing bullets through air. The smoke or the gases that come out of that barrel are going to eventually go further and further out. And again, there was a breeze. It was like 5 miles an hour breeze, whatever, going from right to left. And that's what carried the stuff around the corner of the building.
Gotcha. Yeah, makes sense. And, as far as not being able to see that muzzle flash, obviously farmers had done a video demonstrating that. And then there were some others I found over time that were just amazing in terms of how little of the flash you could see in just a plain wide open field in the dark.
Yep.
From a
Now
great
your
distance.
eyes would see it. I mean, everyone, the people that were at the concert that were looking that direction, they could see the muzzle flash, and that's why you hear them talking. You hear cops saying, "I can see it. I can see it." Blah blah. But with the cameras, what people don't realize is the cameras that were being used, the cell phone cameras, are not made to do that, and to be able to resolve, even though they might have great pixel counts. They're not made to pick up on low light sources, especially from that distance. And that's the same reason why when man landed on the moon, and they're like, well, if man landed on the moon, why don't they see stars? The guys on the moon could see the stars, but the cameras can't, because their aperture, when, a little bit of photography is when you close that aperture down, you're letting less light in, but you're also controlling the brightness of the situation. So it's always constant balancing act. And cameras do that digitally. They're trying to determine what you're actually trying to film, and they're trying to expose for that. They don't know you're trying to film some guy sitting 4 feet back inside of a room on 32nd floor, 1,000 feet away. But we did catch, there are like 3 or 4 videos that have glimpses of muzzle flash. So it is there. It's just, and I'm like you, I would think, God, there should be more, with that number of people filming it. You would think someone would zoom in, or someone would have a better camera, or the guy that was filming, the concert with the actual, good camera, that would have caught more. We don't have that footage either, just so you guys know. So
it would take absolutely the perfect angle looking up in through that size of a hole in that huge building and back into where he's standing back. It would take such a perfect angle to be able to see it, given all the different types of concealment he had around him, including the column, the glass, all the things around him.
Right.
And plus, you're talking about lightweight ammunition. From what I can gather, it was 70 grain or less, probably more in the lines of 55 grain, which doesn't take that hot of a load. And you're just not going to get a tremendous amount of flash out of that. I looked into the ammo a lot more too. I don't want to tell you things I'm making up in my memory, but it seems like it was pretty much a low flash powder type of ammunition anyway from the factory.
Roger, go ahead.
That's not exactly accurate.
Go ahead.
As somebody that shot a lot in the Marine Corps for 10 years, as expert qualified, and have shot rapid fire, full automatic AR M4s. I've shot machine guns, 50 cals, 240 Goffs, 40 Mike. I've done all that stuff. In fact, I've helped teach some of it. The muzzle flash is there. In fact, I know that a lot of people dispute my video, and there's a lot of people that are going to dispute it because of the way it looks. But I can tell you that my girlfriend was standing next to me, and she filmed him shoot out the window at 9:49. Now, it appears that the room is lower than it actually is, but that's because of the angle. And when you compress a video, or when you compress a photo, a side-by-side comparison photo, to bring a building down to size, and when you do that, you bring it down to scale it, long. I can sit down and show somebody how it's done, why it looks and appears today, but it also has to do with
we're losing you, Roger.
Angle. It's also kind of
Roger.
It's kind of all. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I don't know if you're moving around or not. You're breaking up really bad. But yeah, Roger and I are going to try to one day do a show with his video. He knows my opinion of it, and I respect his opinion and everything. So one day we'll sit down together and probably be at each other's throats in about 5 minutes, like last time. But we'll sit there and have a couple beers and sit down and relax and just go through it frame by frame. And you tell me what you see. I'll tell you what I see. What the hell was that? Was that your horn? Roger, did a truck just hit you? Oh shit! I hope a truck didn't just hit him, because it sounded like a tractor trailer or semi rig. But as far as the weapon fire and stuff like that, I'm not going to get into his video now, because I do want to save that for a time that we actually do. Let's see here. Do you guys think he wasn't in contact with anyone, even if he had like 5 or 7 cell phones? And why do you think he even needed more than one phone in the room? I'll bring Roger. Oh, you're already in. I popped you back in. You don't have the letter R this time. Anyway, so as far as the reason he had 3, it was 3 cell phones, and the reason why he had those was various. But I'll secrets. You didn't you check into the cell phones a little bit?
Okay, I'm back. Sorry, I jumped on a different screen.
I'm back. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, we hear you. Sound like you guys were
number?
together. you both are gone. You both come back. What were you guys doing?
I don't know what's going on. We can dispute the video, whatever. I know 100% for a fact it's legit.
Yeah.
But beyond that, the message is he shot out the window at 16 minutes before they're telling people that he shot into the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important because this is what they're trying to cover up, because their liability is a lot more just what they've told the public. I haven't told the public that there were 3 armed security guards armed on the 32nd floor while Hendricks was on the 31st. Now, why would Joe Lombardo throw his own officer under the bus? Yeah, he froze. It happens. But why wouldn't you come out and tell the people that there were 3 armed security guards on the 32nd for 4 volleys while we were getting shot at and did nothing? Because the only reason is he was protecting MGM, the money. There's no other reason that you would throw your officer under the bus.
It was quite clear he wanted to push all that stuff past the election because he didn't want any bad press on one of his officers not performing his duty, because that officer could have saved lives. I don't care what anyone thinks. That officer, for freezing, if he had the intention of going up to go to that room or do whatever he could, even do a distraction, that would have saved lives. In my opinion, I truly believe that. And that didn't happen. And that, to me, makes all the difference in the world. Roger, I don't know if we got you back yet or not. Secrets, I don't know if you're here or not.
Hello?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm Roger's working through.
Sorry, my Wi-Fi is going up and down. I didn't hear your last part. I don't know what your response is, or what I was saying about the 3 armed guards. And why Joe Lombardo didn't tell the public that. But it goes to a pattern of basically the same thing happened with the 2007 shooting.
Right. Now, some people don't know about the 2007 shooting.
I'd like to. Well, that's part of the problem. All of us should be made aware of the 2007 shooting, and I exposed that to the lawyers early on. There was a 2007 mass shooting in New York hotel. A guy named Tinsinger walked in and shot people. He went around for almost nearly 4 hours in July timeframe. It's not normal. Security can stop him.
But Roger, we're
not a bunch of got
broken up.
By
Roger, I don't know if you can get to.
All right, can you hear me now?
Well, yeah, I can hear you now when you say it, but as soon as you start talking or something, it goes away again. I'm not sure what's going on. Go ahead and talk. Right. I'm trying to see.
Break it down.
Okay.
I'll try and break it down slow.
Okay.
2007, Steven Zegrin shot 4 people before.
Roger, we can't even understand you at this point. Oh, he's gone. I didn't do it. Secrets, what are your thoughts?
Well, I was interested in listening to Roger tell about that 2007 shooting. Unfortunately, it was breaking up too much. But I know we did have a question up about the camera or the cell phones, and I am trying to lean on my memory pretty hard here because it's been so long. But I mean, I did look into the cell phone information in terms of the numbers that were associated with Paddock and the sequence of phone calls, the last call made to each cell phone, these kind of things. And I wonder if Roger, if you can hear me, I don't know if you're able to relocate or reposition in some way where you might get better signal, but it's
bad continuously. You there?
I'm here.
Yeah, I know you are.
Roger's trying to be here.
Right. Yeah, right. Try to get.
I'm here. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
It's something with our Wi-Fi. I took it off Wi-Fi, but it's still giving me problems. It might be something with the network.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So go ahead and you talk about Steve Zegrin and the 2007 shooting, if you like.
Okay, so basically, Carrie Zaravica was shot. She took him all the way to court. They already testified to this in court on the lack of communication, detection systems. They went on the ability. The judge retired the next week.
Roger, we're doing the same thing. As soon as you get 10 seconds into it, it goes away, Roger. We can't hear you. It's really you'll hear it when this plays back. It goes about 10 seconds, you're good, and then it goes straight downhill. I can't even hear you now at all.
Gotcha. All right, let me move to the application.
Okay. I'm going to go on to the next question until you get to a location here. How do you think he sniped that woman that was running? It looks like he was actually trying to kill that specific woman. That's Vegas 2 Shooters question. Vegas 2 Shooters, I'm not sure which woman you're speaking about unless you're speaking about Melissa Ramirez. Let me know if that's what you're trying to refer to. But there's no way at the position he was that he could actually specifically try to target individuals at that point. He probably was when he was trying to get off 1 round or 2 rounds here and there, like in the very first few shots. That was definitely him looking through the sight. Most likely whatever weird pleasure these people get from it. I mean, there's a lot of speculation on that, and I don't want to say something that may not be exactly factually correct, but the understanding is a lot of the mass shooters and people that do that, where they shoot rounds individually and they try to go after individual people, that they have a sick satisfaction from that, and then they try to get massive carnage or try to steer people back into another way by letting release of automatic gunfire. So if relates to Melissa Ramirez, I honestly 100% do not believe he was specifically targeting her at all. I just think he was just random shots, and she, once that volley started, they all dipped down, and that's the reason for the upward trajectory, which is there's another researcher out there that makes a bunch of weird claims that that the shots came from above because the angle of the bullets, but that's obviously not the case.
Mike, I think on that topic, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he was, in my mind, he was making reference to the lady who was running over a little bit more toward the back of the venue. It was later in about 7th or 8th volley, and she was running and collapsed real hard, and it was kind of a rough thing to watch, and it was seen mainly from the rooftop cam. If I'm not mistaken, that's what Vegas 2 Shooters was referencing. And that particular volley, I remember October 1 Sounds working through determining the trajectory angles and so forth with each volley based on his audio analysis, and it did line up in terms of the gunfire spraying in that direction at that time. There was some other video work that was done by other creators that was an attempt to do some synchronizing associated with that particular shot and when she fell. And so kind of I went back through that, and basically it turned out that was a few seconds off, so it didn't line up with the timing of the volley, and it was believed to be a separate. The thought process that was being presented was it was believed to be a separate sniper shot at a time in which the volleys were not occurring. And after all the dust settled, it actually was during the time the volley was being fired. And then with October 1 Sounds work, it sure enough was a volley that was in that general direction later in the series of volleys. So that's kind of my best recollection on that particular topic, if Vegas 2 Shooters and I are speaking of the same victim.
Yeah, I'm hoping so too, because I kind of dipped out of once I did all the audio very early on, and I kept promising people I was going to put that out, and I couldn't do it because I was literally waiting for the movie to come out, because I thought it was going to come out a lot sooner. But now that it's out, I'm actually going to start releasing that. But October 1 Sounds has done me a huge favor in that he's done a lot of that work for me, so I don't have to do it. But I'll go back to some of the older ones that I was making and compare notes, because obviously when you do these The audio forensics on gunfire is kind of tricky, and he knows more than I do. But we both use exact or very similar tools to come to the same conclusions, what have you. So we'll both do the same thing. But ideally, I would like to be able to pinpoint certain shots to certain volleys as to when something was done, because there's another kind of a weird situation that happened in the beginning that we were trying to determine when a specific person was shot, and it did have a bearing on their particular case. I can't get into it as to why, but it does involve other people that were around that person at the same time. But no, not another shooter or anything like that. But it's just a weird case. There may be one or two people out there may know what I'm talking about. Please don't mention it if you do. But trying to get it right and the weird thing is the FBI has all of this data. They have these experts. They could have come out and done this. But what happens is that you have people that come out and try to decipher this stuff on their own. And actually, Brian, if Brian's still in here, Brian made a video. He made an attempt to come up with some audio analysis on one, and he tried. He didn't get it exactly right, but he was making an effort to go towards the correct results, and that to me was more important than whether or not he got it right or not. Even Hoover, when Hoover came out, well, Hoover screwed up. Remember, he had to remake his video 3 times, but he kept putting the shooter in weird locations. And then you had the very first one that pissed me off. The only one that pissed me off was actually Mike Adams when he came out. Remember him, the nature whatever guy he was, and he came out there and he says, "I'm going to give you the location of the second shooter," and we're like, okay. And we never get the location of the second shooter. He never reveals which volley it's from. He doesn't reveal the data. He doesn't prove anything. And everybody fell for that. There was almost 2 million, I guess around 2 million views for that one video. And people are telling me I'm an idiot because this guy's got it. And I said, well, if this guy's got it and he says he's got the second shooter, where's the second shooter? I mean, he told us he had it. And yet
now
it wasn't there.
Is Mike Adams now Tim Truth?
I don't know. It's possible.
Maybe somebody in the chat knows. But
I'm
yeah.
I'm done, by the way. I don't know if y'all can hear me.
Yeah, I hear you.
You mind if I continue? Because I'm going to give y'all the listeners some real information that they haven't been told.
On the well, explain that we were in the 2007 shooting. Okay,
yeah.
Go ahead. Yep.
2007, Steven Zegran, the guy that was going through a divorce, lost his job. He walked around in between the casinos with a trench coat on in June, July, and 100-degree heat in Las Vegas. That's not normal. None of the security stopped him. He ended up shooting 4 or 5 people from an elevated position down onto the casino floor. You know, they said they could never foresee somebody shooting from an elevated position. So that's one.
Yeah.
2, the girl sued them, Carrie Zaravica. She took them all the way to court. She sued them for not having metal detectors, for lax security procedures, communication issues, same things that they've had now because they never addressed them. They won on foreseeability at the time. Now, this is important because while this is all going on, I told this to all the lawyers. The case info is there. It's documented in case. They went all the way. So it's documented. Now, the thing is, they came out and told everybody we can't foresee this. Then the lawyers released the Mandalay Bay 2014 incident. But the lawyers didn't go back and say, hey, by the way, we got this other incident. So there's a pattern of protecting MGM. Even though they came out with it, they got them to the negotiating table to make it look like, hey, we're doing something. But if they really wanted to bury them, there's case history. There's a pattern of conduct. The reason that's important is because the Humphreys case is what the Nevada State Supreme Court overruled the foreseeability issue. They ruled that they can no longer use foreseeability because it's happened too many times, that there's case history there.
Mm-hmm.
So they jumped on the bandwagon for the Safety Act. Well, that was meant for emerging technology, not for, it does include CSC because of security procedures, but the threat didn't come from the venue. The threat came from the security failures outside of the venue. Not everybody got shot inside the venue. I think there were injuries outside. So they couldn't blame it on CSC security, and that's what they tried to do the whole damn time.
Yeah,
but I want to go back a little bit.
Yeah.
I want to go a little bit back further, and I can put together a comprehensive, understandable, put 2 and 2 together and figure it out on your own. You can look this up and verify it on your own. I'll tell you, but you can verify it all on your own.
Well, is this worthy of a show, or is this going to be just like a 2-minute thing?
I'm going to try and be quick about it, but
Okay.
tell your listeners,
Because I'll do a show with you if it gets long and involved.
tell your listeners to look up 1 October 2015. Christopher Mercer.
Yep.
Largest mass shooting in Oregon, Umpqua College.
Mm-hmm.
The kid had autism. He had Asperger's specifically. He killed himself with a Smith & Wesson that looks identical to Stephen Paddock's weapon. Paddock committed the act on the same day, 2 years later. Paddock hadn't bought any rifles in almost 8 years. He bought a couple of handguns just prior to this, but he started buying rifles on 2 October 2016. Same month comes out. The movie's called The Accountant. Paddock's an accountant. It's about Asperger's. It's about taking down the mob and embarrassing the FBI while helping them. It's about dogs playing poker, cheating. The father-like figure in the movie. That's why it comes from the FBI report where they said the memory of his father. Where do you think it came from? The memory of the father is the guy that's the father-like figure in the movie in prison. Looks almost nearly identical to Stephen Paddock's father, as he would last remember him at 7 years old when he was arrested as a bank robber.
Mm-hmm.
The movie's about taking down the mob and embarrassing them, taking down the corrupt CEO, James Moran. Like MGM, here's the other part that most people don't know. Stephen Paddock sued the casinos. He had a couple of different lawsuits going, but I believe it was 2011, Cosmos Slip and Fall. Paddock's a millionaire.
Mm-hmm.
He's a millionaire, right? He sued them for $100,000 for his slip and fall, for his injuries, his couldn't sleep, his mental health, all that stuff.
Right.
He sued them for $100,000 only. It went to arbitration. He lost. They made him pay fees.
Mm-hmm.
The only bill he paid off his debt. He sent his girlfriend $150,000, sent her to the Philippines. He still had 2 houses. He bought all those guns. He spent $1.6 million. He still had money in the bank. He still had that $30,000 freaking receipt from the casino. He wasn't broke. He did this on purpose to leave them liable because he felt they were cheating him. It goes the same long lines. It's not a far stretch. Same thing Eric said, that he was getting cheated on his comps and everything else. Well, he was cheated on the lawsuit as well. That's the only bill he didn't pay off, a $270 debt. He pays off all. Who goes and pays off their debts if they're going to go kill themselves? Why not just go waste the money on a bunch of cocaine and hookers?
I get that. I think for him, I mean, that's a whole nother section there. But one thing I can say for sure is a lot of people made question as to whether or not his injuries were actually real when he did the slip and fall. And I can tell you, I saw the pictures. You can't fake what I saw. So if he faked it, then he faked it so good that he actually caused the actual injuries that he claimed he had, because those were legit. Yeah.
That's the whole point.
I know.
Just like our injuries were real, but they got it in arbitration. They get it in mediation. They get their high-powered lawyers to come in, and they steamroll over anybody that stands up to them. That's what they do. That's their MO. That's why he left them in a position that that the casinos were screwed and would have to pay out.
Right.
And then that's why MGM did the private mediation, where they bypassed state disclosure laws that are meant there to protect us as victims. And they did a private mediation to bring Jennifer Tagliati in to hide it until I released information on her and her father, who her father is also a former retired FBI agent in charge of organized crime. He goes back to a position the week before Jennifer Tagliati takes on the case. He goes back to work for the new governor, running the Department of Safety, where he was fired from before he went to work for MGM. Jennifer Tagliati gets the bench seat. How many millions did her and other judge get paid to do this case?
You know what's funny? What's funny about that, Roger, is this: a lot of the evidence that this side of the table is brought out, and I think Brian brought up a point earlier about us attacking other channels and stuff like this. It's not really. It's just if someone says something absurd, it's going to create attention, and we may say something about it. But when actual true evidence comes out of us, meaning it wasn't brought to us by an attorney, you brought this information forward, and then Michelle made it stick to NBC, and I got involved, and then it snowballed from there, and then obviously Papa. So I want to make sure everybody in this thing's got some credit, but you are the one that initiated it. The important thing is that if if everybody's going to report on Vegas and they claim to be, going after the truth, and they even put the word truth in their name, why aren't they reporting on this? Why don't they report about the Togliatti situation? Why don't they report on the bump stock situation that just happened a couple weeks ago? And I'll tell you why, because we're the ones that found it. That's why. And that's, huh?
I can tell you this much. So the FBI, I filed every report you could possibly file. OIG, I filed complaints to the bar. I've contacted the FBI multiple times. They never even came out and took a statement for me or my girlfriend. Everything was done via email. I had friends in the FBI that I went to in Vegas, specifically through mutual friends, and I sent all this information. But it's embarrassing. You got to think, at the same time, we're coming off the hills of Russia, all that stuff going on. They've got a black eye. The truth of the matter is the ATF dropped the ball. The FBI dropped the ball under Obama. A Marine actually created the bump stock a long time ago, a very similar device. It was never approved because they knew it could basically be converted to nearly full auto. Right. But under Obama, they approved the bump stock. And you know what they approved it under? As the ability for disabled people to be able to shoot easier. Well, if you can't shoot a single shot rifle,
I know. You saw
how
that.
are you going to hit? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I had a guy argue with me the other night saying Stephen Paddock took this device that was made for people that had disabilities and he bastardized it and turned it into no, he didn't. That's not what happened at all. Everyone I have never met, I used to sell the damn things. So not one person ever came in my store and said, "Hey man, I'm disabled. Can I get something that turns my weapon automatic?" No. You would make a bad problem even worse. That's not what anyone can claim that to get it through the patent process or whatever it is they think they were doing, but I don't even see that in the patents. I don't really see that as being the determining factor. All it says is to make the weapon fire at a cyclical rate of speed, and that's essentially what they were trying to get the thing to do. I don't know of anyone. This person said, I have several friends that bought them because they're disabled. Really? Name one of your friends. I want to see just one of your friends that did that.
Here's the deal.
I'm not falling for that shit.
The lawyers in that case and them getting the bump stock passed fudged the words. They changed the wording. So the device became a secondary part of the weapon. It's not a part of the weapon that the ATF could regulate. But the ATF should have, in any given administration, said, you know what? There's a problem here. Technically, they're right, but this should never fucking pass. We're going to go ahead and send this up the chain to the Department of Justice, to the FBI, to the president, if I have to make sure that so that we don't outgun so criminals don't get a hold of this and outgun our law enforcement. That's the whole reason why we had the assault weapons ban, to ban this capability from outgunning our local law enforcement after the bank robbery in Northern California. So,
okay. Let me address something here real quick that's happening in the chat, because I normally I don't monitor the chat unless I see it all in capital letters. Somebody's asking a question. I still don't know the full story of what's going on here, but I will be clear about this. Brian, CL is a moderator here, and I made her a moderator because I trust her judgment and her ability to handle situations as I would think I would expect someone to do. So she has my utmost respect and everything like that. So I don't have any qualms about her, even if she spoke on my behalf, which I don't think she did. But we do see eye to eye, and I don't think I have an issue at all with her. But I would like to try to figure out what's going on, and I'll figure that out later. I don't really want to distract from too much. I just don't want that to run out on its own, and if anyone disrespects CL, I'm just going to kick you out and ban you and all that other good stuff. So don't go there with me when it comes to CL. It's just simply not going to happen. She's been through enough, and I'm not going to let anyone go in there and do that. Anyway, so let me address this thing real quick with the Vegas 2 shooters, and we'll bounce back and forth into yours, and Secrets, you can come in anytime you want. It says, Turber, speak on White Hat Paladin and what you know, and also, do you think he purposefully kept it a secret that he didn't know he stayed near Paddock, and do you think he knew Paddock? I'm not going to answer this in great detail because I don't want to say anything that would be speculative, but I'm sure he'll watch this and he'll say whatever. But James Brent Grubbs, the guy who's actually Paladin, he did live at the same address that Stephen Paddock did, or he at least had the address there. Now, whether or not he physically was in that building at any given time during that time frame, I don't honestly know. I can go and probably figure that out, but it's really a waste of my time. But the main thing was that I was asking him questions one night, and I was just asking him about that address and if he knew Stephen Paddock, and he danced around that question all night long. And I simply just said, "Did you know Stephen Paddock?" And he wouldn't answer it. And he would answer with questions like, "Why do you ask?" "Well, just yes or no. Did you know Stephen Paddock?" "Oh," and then finally he says, "Oh, you're talking about the address." So yes, the answer to that question is he knew ahead of time that his address and Stephen Paddock's were the same. So I guess he just waited and was wondering why it didn't come up at whatever time. And because of the way he danced around those questions, is the reason why I made the video that I did that basically put him on blast, or whatever you want to call it. It was because he was dancing around my questions. If he would have just answered the question, then I'd have the answer and I wouldn't have to worry about it. So to this day, he did say that he did not know Stephen Paddock. So I'll take him at face value that he didn't know Stephen Paddock, but it was kind of weird that he knew he lived at that same address with Stephen and then never mentioned it and say, "Hey, well, here's something odd. I actually lived in the same building with Stephen for blah, 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 a number of years." Or he had an apartment there. He said he used it as a business address to get mail or something like that. $2,000 something a month for P.O. box is a bit expensive.
Can I make a comment toward this?
Yep.
And not specifically just him. There's several people. You know, we talk about Vegas Strong, and in the movie, that was the main objective, laying out who the players are, what they did, why they did it, and greed, basically. But, you know, there's a lot of people surrounding this event. Everybody's got their 2 cents. Everybody's doing all this and that. You know, it's fine. Everybody's going to make their comments. But a lot of this stuff is destructive toward the families because the real information has been hidden right in plain sight. A couple of twists and turns, but nothing major. This is not a major whodunit. This is a very simple deal. But a lot of people stepped in and started profiting off of subscribers and keeping this game going, because the longer they can keep it going, the more money they're going to make and the more attention they're going to get. There's a whole bunch of shit going on with this when it's real simple. And I'm not here to brag or anything. Mike, you know my background. I'm just going to lay it out for everybody. I am formally trained in counterintelligence as an interrogator in terrorism, espionage, sabotage, and subversion. I didn't get involved in this to make a name for myself. In fact, I would prefer to go away and be done with this. And honestly, I would have preferred to have moved on with my life because, you know what, I still had my girlfriend. I didn't end up in the hospital twice for trying to kill myself. I didn't become homeless for the last year. I didn't lose almost all my friends over this. My family turned their back on me to stand here and make a name for myself. But, you know, there's a lot of other people doing that. That's why I walked away from the money. I think that's a powerful statement. And people need to know I am still suing them. I don't give a damn about the money. I think they should pay everybody more money. But things like the memorial grounds, of having a real memorial there, safety, actually being addressed so this never happens again on their property, is something that I'm concerned about. And getting everybody help, including myself. But at the end of the day, I don't give a damn if anybody knows my name or not. But I told everybody, and if anybody looks up anything on me from the very beginning, I told the families I would be the guy at the end of the day that's standing up for them, and I'll be the last guy standing. And that was true. And thankfully, I've got you guys helping me do this because nobody else would listen back in the day. You know, people, you know, there's a lot of information flying around, and I get it. Right. But what I have to say is factual. I can point it out. People can look it up on their own. And it takes just a little deductive, common sense reasoning to look at it and see and understand what's going on. Right. And it's not some far stretch. 1 in 5 mass shooters at the time of this incident were on the autism spectrum scale. Yes. We couldn't confirm that he was on the autism spectrum scale, but we know he was antisocial, narcissistic type personality, which can be very much closely related to autism, Asperger's specifically. We know he's highly intelligent. He just wasn't technically savvy because he didn't have the experience. Right. He's not a military guy.
I went down that path with the Asperger's and everything. That was, in fact, I can reveal this for the first time right here, right now on my own show. And I'll back it up with the email. I was sent an email by Catherine Lombardo and Alex Napoli from Napoli Law, which is where Catherine worked. That email was an email asking me to research a specific person and a couple others about Asperger's and as it relates to this case, because I'd already brought up the subject to her. And when I was talking to her, I said, listen, I said, there's some character traits that I'm seeing here that fall in line with Asperger's, and although people with Asperger's account for a very low percentage of the population, they account for a relatively large portion of the people that had mass shootings. So I said, I've already seen this before, so I'm already familiar with it. And so 2 weeks go by and I get this email, and lo and behold, it was like someone had planned this. Is like Catherine says, okay, we got this email from this guy, and this guy is making all of these claims. Please find this out for us, because they didn't want to give it to whoever. Yeah, so they gave it to me. Yeah, and yes, I did work with the attorneys. Did she pay me? No. Yeah, it was no pay or involved or anything like that. So I'm always want to make that clear. But I did go. I went down that path, and I talked to a guy that had Asperger's, and in talking to him, it made me feel more entrenched that I felt Stephen had Asperger's. But I specifically talked to Eric at length about it, because I told Eric, I said, look, I've already put this out there, and I don't know, and I don't really know how to ask you this, because a lot of people live with Asperger's and they really don't even know they have it, because it's such, they're not on that spectrum to the point where it's real noticeable. Some people have narcissistic tendencies or all these other different things, and it's hard to put them on the spectrum. But I personally, even to this day, I still feel that he had some variation of it. I don't know what, but it makes sense because he was socially inept. He had different things. He'd fixate on things for a long time. He seemed to be a germaphobe. All these different little things that point out people with it. But anyway, so whether or not that'll come out sometime down the road, who knows? I wish we could have had a definitive answer ahead of time. All right, let me look at this Brian situation that's going on. I don't know. Brian, I can't really stop to go check this. I will try to figure out what this is. I'm not going to take up. All I'm going to say is that if CL said you did something, or that you said something maybe on your own show that we don't agree with here, maybe that's what she was pointing out, and I will agree with that, because there are a lot of things you put out there that just simply don't hold water. But it is your show. You can do what you want, report about what you want, just like I can do here. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that goes out there that a lot of other creators put out that they don't back up with facts and with actual evidence to support it. They create things. Now, I'm not saying you're doing this. I'm just saying that overall, the number of people that I've seen produce evidence to support some of these theories that they do, the evidence is shaky at best, and that's the reason why their evidence isn't sitting in any attorney's office. And I'll pat my own back. That's why mine is, because I actually go the extra mile to make certain that what I present, you can't debunk it. If you can, then you need to go talk to a bunch of attorneys because they accepted it. We'll put it that way. But if anyone has, if anyone, the way I look at it like this, and I know I don't want to belabor this point because we want to get back to the movie, but the point being is if people have evidence that they keep putting out on YouTube and they keep saying this is this and whatever, and they're not taking that evidence. If it's so damn good, then go to the FBI or go to an attorney and say, hey, this, and see, and let them vet it for you. Let them look at it and bring it into a case. I'm not saying this case, because this is over, but do that. I did. It wasn't that hard. I took the Melissa Ramirez video. I was definitely not going to give it to the FBI. And I met Catherine Lombardo when they were about to go into the venue, the day they were going to map it and stuff like this. And that was the first time I met her. And I said, hey, I have something I want you to take a look at. She gave me her card. And then I went to her. I also met Craig Island that same day. And so she was near me. So I went to Upland and met her the next day, and she saw the video, and the rest is history. So, and I kept getting more and more evidence. The problem I have with some of the other people out there that keep putting out evidence and saying that it's ironclad, it's the smoking gun or whatever. If it's so damn solid, then why aren't you going to an attorney? Why aren't you giving it to law enforcement or whoever? I mean, come on. I mean, that's an easy question that you should be able to answer. Is if your evidence is that can stand on its own, then don't put it on YouTube. Take it down and to the person that can actually utilize it to help the victims or whatever, even if it's not in this case. Or, I'll try to help out where I can too. So anyway.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
So you already know I sent my evidence to the FBI back in November of 2017. Within a month, I sat down and wrote like an 8 to 11 page paper on what he did and how he did it, pulled it off.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been sitting on that, but they let out clues that they knew, because I sent them the paper telling them basically how he did it. But the other thing is, I want this to be clear. It's not over yet. People think it's all over because the lawyers say, yeah, it's a done deal. You can't opt out. They're full of shit. The lawyers are full of shit. And I got to go back a little bit because you know what? Back in February 12th was when I addressed the lawyers. Something happened on February 12th. On February 13th, I addressed the lawyers on Jennifer Togliatti. I said, hey, how can I name the one freaking judge that should not be involved in this case? And then all of a sudden, they changed my mediation dates. My mediation dates say March 4th through 7th, 11th through 13th. We know mediation started on September 19th. They changed my dates on purpose because they were trying to conceal the fact that Jennifer Togliatti was already working on the case, and they were trying to hide it. But here's the thing. Roughly, I believe it was March or April, in their SEC filing, MGM announced the $735 to $800 million. Nothing changed.
I know.
So here's the deal with that. So nothing changed, but they didn't release that information until 8 months later. Oh, we reached a settlement. Nothing else was negotiated.
I know.
Security, the grounds, nothing changed. So they announced it within a month of mediation. So nothing changed, but yet Robert Egler got all happy, right? But here's the thing. If nothing changed, why did it take them 8 months to announce? They had to make it look like they actually negotiated on our part. They did.
I can tell you why. I can tell you two. There's actually two reasons why. One is so they could get past the statute of limitations for people to be able to file, because once that October 1 date was that date, that's why they waited till the 2nd to basically make that announcement. So that's right. Number one. Number two, the reason why they didn't publicize that amount is really simple. They honestly did not want to take, if they were pretty much set at that $800 million mark, you don't want to go out there and say, does anyone else have any stuff you want to bring in here so we can do more work and still divide the same $800 million? No one wants to do that. Okay.
Well,
I'm just letting you know that's how that worked. And I
get that those were factors, but the other part is people still had injuries. Sam was still in the hospital that just died this past April. One of the girls I helped, she was still in the hospital. So none of their medical records, they didn't even collect my medical records for my primary therapist. And after I fired the lawyers, they went and tried to collect my records using an outdated authorization and got denied. But here's the thing. A lot of us, what they did to me, and I'll just be frank with everybody. I'm probably the most well-documented case of PTSD because I'm 100% disabled from combat and on Social Security disability prior to the event. And they offered me 14 grand, 8 grand after my lawyer takes 40%. But here's the deal. They didn't collect my medical records. So how do you know what my future injuries were, therapy, all this different stuff that was going on? They didn't. They settled on an amount that was capped at the insurance policy, basically limit, and a little bit of a slap on the wrist afterwards. It's prejudicing our case when they don't even know what our injuries are because they haven't collected records. And what the lawyers did, they came back and said, hey, well, you can sign here and we can put you in a special category and we can get you some more money. But you got to sign here and you got to opt in. And, oh, by the way, you won't know that amount. So it's like blind leading the blind. I'm going to sign a document saying, I don't know what the amount is, but you're going to get me some more money, but I don't know what it is. Who makes a negotiation that way? Nobody makes a negotiation. You don't sign a contract without knowing what's in the contract. So that's the kind of behavior that's been going on. And it's wrong. It's improper. It's a bad faith negotiation. And if this deal gets undone because of me, they're going to want to settle because what I have to share will bury them in a courtroom. And so they're making it very clear that I'll never get my day in court. But, if everybody just says, you know what, I'm not cashing this check. I have a problem with this. I want this relooked at. I guarantee you, if we all stood with one voice, they would come back and want to negotiate, and we could negotiate. Why the lawyer said you can't negotiate the festival grounds that's being turned into a memorial. You can't negotiate that they fix their security. The hell you can't. Everything is negotiable. Everything is negotiable. We might not be able to write the law, but you know what the law does change? The law changes based on precedent, based on court cases. Just like the 80s fire. Not every building has fire sprinkler code, the
Hilton
sprinklers. But the date going forward, that any new building going forward would have to have that in place before they can open. And that's the same thing that needs to happen here, and what they're trying to avoid, because it's national and because big corporations and big money is involved, and they don't want to do that. But you know what? We're going to have the same problem in another 3 years, just like 2007, just like 2014. And after this, they're going to come back out and tell the people, you know what? We could never foresee this happening.
Well, there's a whole bunch of other. Well, let me go into a little bit about the dollar amount. Back when the dollar amount seemed to hover right at that $735 to $750, $800 million mark, and it just didn't seem to go anywhere. You know as well as I do what the actual reason for that is. And the actual reason is because that's what the insurance would pay. And that was the quickest way to get this thing done and over with, was to do it for that amount. Anything above that, MGM would fight it a lot harder. MGM said that, okay, we'll pay $800 million, which means they're on the cuff for $50 million, or $51 million is what it comes out to be. And $749 million would be paid by their insurance company, Zurich. So once that amount was pretty much fixed on, no one really maneuvered from it. But I can tell you this, it was argued. I can't say the specifics around how I know this, but I'll just say this. There were some pieces of paper that were put on a table sitting in a certain conference room, and those pieces of paper had different dollar amounts that everyone thought might be the dollar amount that would be looked at. The dollar amounts that were on the piece of paper were $6 billion, $11.2 billion, $12 billion, and then all the way down to $4 billion and $2.8 billion. Not one piece of paper said $800 million. I can tell you that for a fact. Not one. The money that was talked about as to where this would probably go or get to, based on previous law and other cases of similar. Well, obviously nothing was similar to this, but so this was going to be a precedent case in this case. But no dollar amount was below that 2.8 or 2.2 to $2.8 billion mark. Not one piece of paper went down to definitely not $800 million. So my question, that I still have the same question to this day, is, and I know part of the answer, but when they got to that $800 million mark, someone lost their nuts and did not have the ability to fight this any further. The answer that is given to us, and the inside answer too, is the same answer. There's not a different answer. Is that they truly felt that if this would have went to trial, that there would have been enough evidence on the side of MGM that would probably bring into doubt many of the arguments that were being raised. That is the actual answer.
Well, here, I can answer some of that.
Yeah.
I can tell you who it was that lost his nuts. Don't. I'm not worried. You can say anything you want about him. Just don't mention anyone else. Yeah, I'm not going in there. I'm not looking at singling anybody out. But I can tell you, he came out and said 800 million, not even close. Then he's all happy about it because he's the guy that freaking screwed us. He's the one that MGM approached. They had dirt on him. They had something on him. That's why it didn't go any further. And the thing is, MGM was worried about getting sued by their insurer, Zurich American, which I won't go into it, but I have some information there. But this was insurance fraud. It's insurance fraud because they've been warned in court. It's already documented in a court case. So not only 2014, 2007 is documented in a court case. So all these same things. And then they cut their security. They cut their security from armed to unarmed, to save money. There's the security cameras not working. All these different factors all go to the same reason. Security is not profitable. It's an expense. So they were trying to cut money to save money to make their shareholders money. And the thing that they were worried about was getting sued by their shareholders on top of us. Mm-hmm. And if we went to court, they did lose their nuts, because if we went to court, they would lose. Mm-hmm. We would have won. They were afraid of MGM using the Safety Act because there was a bunch of stuff with the Safety Act. But you know what? it could have been all overcome if they knew what the hell they were doing and they had professionals in there that knew what the hell they were doing, that knew guns, that knew, because you know what, you change it from guns to bombs, and it could have been a bomb going off. What you couldn't pursue.
Well, as it relates to the Safety Act, if you actually go to the day they announced it on Catherine Lombardo's page on Facebook, the post is still there to this day. I went into her office. We sat down for about 20 minutes, and she wanted to know the military because the connection to the Safety Act was more military, and there were some circumstances that had to be met, or some criteria had to be met before they could even consider it. So the very first criteria that had to be met was it had to be considered a terrorist act by the Department of Homeland Security. The funny thing is out of all of the different agencies that have a definition on what constitutes a terrorist act, the Department of Homeland Security is the only one that doesn't put in a certain component.
Right.
And so,
and we both, both of us know that the FBI's definition is different from the DOD's. The DOD is different from the DHS.
But all the rest of them are somewhat similar. That this one agency has decided to keep out a specific component. So the funny thing is that I told her, I said, no matter what, I'm telling you this, and I'll stake whatever is left of my reputation on it, if I have one. I don't even know if I have a reputation, probably a bad one, but whatever, who cares? But any reputation, good or bad, I'll stake it, that this will not be considered a terrorist act because it doesn't meet even the second level of what a terrorist act would be considered. So it didn't meet the level 1 criteria. It didn't meet level 2 criteria. It met level 3, which the state could have actually said it was a terrorist act. And even Sheriff Lombardo said that he could. Exactly. So he had already opened his mouth and said, that's not a terrorist act. And then you'd have to watch him backpedal and go, well, I was mistaken at the time. Oh, so since you admit you were mistaken about that, let's talk about all this other shit you were wrong about.
Right.
But it didn't really go that way. But that was a tense 3 days that we went around, and then there were some aces in the hole that were there. And so there was a particular person that we were going to bring to the table that if this went to become considered a part of the Safety Act, this person, which I obviously can't say who it is, but let's just say that it would be like a well-known military person, very well-known, who would walk in the door and say this wasn't a terrorist act, and everyone in that building would go, okay, case closed. That's how high up this guy was. So if he didn't agree it was a terrorist act, and the president didn't agree it was a terrorist act, then no one else was really going to fall in line behind it. It would have been thrown out really quickly. So they had to reshuffle really fast. And that was a bad PR thing to sue the victims anyway. So it was a bad PR move. And that really obviously backfired. They didn't think that one through. But that also forced our hand on this side to come up with some other strategies, which did come into play. But the problem I have with that is it didn't move the damn money at all. The money stayed at $800 million. That's one of my biggest issues in this case, is that the dollar amount didn't change, even though more and more stuff was being brought to the table.
Just because the local lawyers were kind of the lead on everything. Yep. I mean, you had all the lawyers from all California and everywhere else, but they relied on the local lawyers, and the local lawyers, at least the top one, decided that, hey, this is my fucking town, and I don't want the money leaving, and I want to protect our state jobs and the employment. And oh, by the way, Brian Sandoval, the former governor, goes to work for MGM. Cicliak gets his promotion. George Tagliati goes back to the Department of Safety and basically gets a promotion. His daughter gets a federal bench seat and a bunch of money, and nobody's the wiser until I throw a freaking monkey wrench in their plan. But yeah, the Terrorism Act. The government didn't want people arguing against the Terrorism Act because the Safety Act. The Safety Act was meant for emerging technologies after 9/11. That they want a new technology to come out, and it would limit the liability of a corporation so they didn't go bankrupt if something failed because it's new technology. And MGM was trying to exploit that, but everybody knew what the hell was going on there. They were trying any damn way they could to weasel their way out of it. And the simple fact of the matter is, if the lawyers came out and held a public press conference and just said a couple of the things that I've talked about, like the 2007 case where it's in court and it's already documented, that would have buried them publicly and we could have negotiated.
Yep.
So the moved, they decided to protect the money. The same reason they didn't release that information, the same reason that they brought in Jennifer Togliatti and didn't tell half the families, because I was the one arguing that. I was the one that first announced the $735 million, because as soon as it popped up, I was calling the lawyers right away and announced it. And then Egglet came out and said, not even close, but nothing changed for 8 months. Nothing else got argued except for the money. And there was really no argument because it was settled months before. So MGM pretty much dictated everything, whatever they had on Robert. Egglet, I don't know what they had, but they had something on them and at the end of the day, he didn't even have to have anything on him. He was going to walk away with close to $100 million anyways. Either way.
Yeah, over 100 million.
He was walking away with most of us combined.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, they offered me $14 grand, and I yanked probably 5-6 people out of there, and 70 people directed out. And not that I'm special, but I lost my relationship, became homeless, suicidal, all these different things, and it's not just me. And that's the whole reason why I'm standing up, because it's not just about me. And they can offer me whatever the hell they're gonna want to offer me, but I'm not taking it unless there's a deal for everybody, because they screwed everybody and they thought they could get away with it. They would never get caught. Nobody would be the wiser. And it's not going to happen.
All right, I'm going to start winding this down because we're on the 3-hour, 15-minute mark, and I don't want InServe to freak out that I'm overlapping his show, so we'll start winding it down. I will say this to Brian. This is an open invitation to you for a debate. There are several key pieces of information that you have put out there that I do have a problem with, and you actually blocked me from your channel when I actually tried to bring it to your attention in a positive way. And that kind of rubbed me wrong or whatever, and I kind of let it go. But yeah, we've had our little things here and there, but I will do this for you. If you have any issue with any evidence that I brought to the table, you're more than welcome to bring that up. And if you would like to do some form of debate or discussion or something like that, we can do that. And then we'll see where it goes. That's up to you. Because there is some information that you've put out there that a lot of people watch you. And keep in mind, this is, and I'm not saying you're exactly Hoover or Jason Goodman or James Brent Grubbs or any of these other idiots out there like KL or Truth Bomb that I can talk about freely, because they are clearly idiots. You tend to come from a different angle because you're a former pilot and all these different things. And you and I have a similar technical background when it comes to analyzing data. The problem I have is that I don't see how two people with a decently technical background can look at the same data and come up with two completely different results. So there may be another dynamic there that I'm not really familiar with, or I don't really understand. And maybe we can explore that, because I would like to figure this out. I went into other areas a long time ago to figure out why people think the way they do. And it's not that I'm right and you're wrong, even though I am right and that you are wrong. It's just to figure out why it is you think you're right and why it is I think you're wrong. And sometimes it's better to understand each other than it is to keep throwing battles back and forth. But when people make wild assertions and don't back it up with actual factual data, just a bunch of mumbo jumbo smoke and mirror stuff, then I take offense to that, because that's like, and I look towards certain people and I expect more from them. People like yourself, who was a former pilot and all this other stuff. I kind of look at you and go, you should be smarter than this. When I look at somebody like Thumper, I go, yeah, it's Thumper. He's going to say something really stupid, and that's just because he's stupid. But you're relatively intelligent, so it's always been intriguing to figure out why people come up to the conclusions that they do, with my understanding that they seem to be articulate, they seem to be able to handle math, they seem to have some training in certain areas, and maybe something went askew and they went down a path and no one can bring them back. A lot of people went down paths and they couldn't come back because they just couldn't admit that they were wrong. And that's a problem I have in the scientific community, is that that's not an accepted practice in science. If you make a mistake, like I've done myself, and you come back and you go, you know what? I said this and I found out it wasn't. I even did that on KL's show one time when in the chat area, when I admitted I had screwed up about the elevators being at the end of that one hallway. It was actually adjacent. And yeah, that was stupid on my part. But she had something to go on with these dogs that were synchronized or something. I don't know. So that was pretty funny. But anyway, long story short, yeah, I would be more than happy to look at whatever hell's going on here. But I will tell you this: if you disrespect CL, you're out. Period. I have that much respect for this woman that no matter who comes in here, if they disrespect her, you're gone. Period. With that said, secrets, if you're still in here, just kind of hiding in the corner, we're going to start shutting down. Same thing with you, Roger. If you guys want to say your finals, and then we can go on to the next episode.
I'll just end it real quick.
Sure.
Hey guys, I am still fighting for everybody. I'm not doing it for my damn self. Like, I'm trying to stand up to do the right thing, because if I'm the only one that's got legal grounds right now to still sue, I'm your last hope to get the truth, unless you want to wait 50 years for the FBI to come out with their final report. That wasn't their final report. It's going to come out just like Sandy Hook, 400 pages years later. But I don't want to wait 4 years. I want them to come in and do their job. I hope they go in and arrest these guys for what they've done afterward, during, before, and afterward of what they've done, because some of it is criminal. It's not just civil, and it's a disgrace of what they've done as an American company in our country, as a Marine, and my buddy's dying. That's not what we went and fought for. That's not what we died for. Not that type of behavior. I don't care what their fiduciary duties were. They had a responsibility to do the right thing for the right reason, and they have every opportunity to do that in this case still, and they have failed to do that. So I don't care if they change CEOs or not, or their board. I want them to take some damn responsibility, just like anybody else would want to. We screwed up. We're going to fix this. We're going to fix our security, and we're going to help the people, and we're going to move on. Had they done that, I wouldn't be standing here today fighting. But I am fighting, and I hope you guys get behind me, because I'm not going down without a fight, even if I walk away with nothing. One day you're going to find out what I've said is correct, and it is what it is. I don't need to be right. I just happen to be right. It is what it is. But yeah. I can prove it. I can lay it out for you and let you look it up yourself. It ain't hard. It ain't rocket science. It's not as complicated. It's not helicopter freaking gunman conspiracy theory. These guys do copycat each other. Paddock was just rich and white and old. That's the only difference. But he was a copycat, and it doesn't matter why he really did it. It's the fact that he was able to do it, that he was able to get into that building so easily and do what he did. And now that they're covering it up because they've had it happen before, and nothing changes unless we force them to change it. So Good luck. Have a good night.
All right, buddy. Appreciate it, Roger. Secrets?
I can't touch that, man. That was all that needed to be said right there. So appreciate everybody's time, and thanks for having me. And we will do it again sometime soon, hopefully.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming on. Roger, appreciate you coming on. Ram, appreciate you coming on. Guys, I really think here's something that I'm confused about, and this is not meant to take away from anything or harm anybody, but there's a couple of situations that came to me about the movie that I think is relevant at this point that I want to discuss. One is the question of, why are we being charged for a movie that should be free or something like that? Well, I don't know of anyone that makes documentaries that can afford to do that and not charge for it somehow, some way, to recoup back all the upfront costs that he had to put out to make the video to begin with. It ain't cheap making this thing, and we're talking lots of tens of thousands of dollars to even go this route. So I have no qualms with that at all, and I haven't been paid a dime at all. So I'm, those people that are attacking me saying, how can I profit off of it? Well, I'm not. Period. So you can take that and shove it right up your ass. I don't really care. But as far as anything else is concerned, I find it kind of odd that after 2.5 years of some people that haven't seen it yet, and I don't mean, I'm not talking about anyone here or anyone specifically, but when people come out and they start making opinions about it and they haven't seen it, and then they say they're not going to see it, I'm like, okay, so you form, and I'm talking about the PIO at LVMPD has made an opinion of this and has put on record that their opinion, and they haven't seen it either. So that just kind of I just find that amusing, that people will make an opinion about a movie that they haven't seen and then double down on it, and then say they're not going to see it because of whatever other reason, or complain about it showing bad scenes. And I get it. We're actually going to, just so everybody knows, Ram does have a heart. And because of certain feedback that we get, we couldn't, when you go do a screening of a movie, when you guys, before the movies get to the theaters, there are these festivals and events. And when you're there, you get to hear the feedback immediately. So no one has that with this, but we're getting the feedback. And if there's something we can go back in and change a little bit or whatever, or move a scene, if a scene's a little bit too powerful or it's got too much this or too much that, those things are things that Ramsey can look at and actually do. And that's what's being done. So just so you guys know that it's not someone with no heart putting this out there because they like to show this type of movie just to piss people off. The movie is there to actually expose the people that need to be exposed. Now, some people may have different varying opinions as to whether or not these people have actually done the things we claim they've done. Well, guess what? Sue me right here. If anything I've said is wrong, go for it, because you can't, because it's 100% correct. I double checked everything that I've done. And so I'm not even remotely concerned about that. I don't think Ramsey is either. The thing is that documentaries are made to allow you to step into the shoes of the person or the entity that they are talking about, so you can see it in a different light than what you do on a 3-minute, 2-minute blurb that you see on your local news at night, because they can only tell you so much. I mean, ask Michelle when we talked about the NBC story. Ask Roger. When all these different scenarios can be played out differently if more of the story is told from the perspective of the person who's telling the story. Because how many times have you seen somebody on the news, and then the guy that was on the news is like, what the hell? That's not what I said. And because they only cut a specific piece of what he said, and it changed everything. And that's the difference of this documentary. So we're trying to put the information out there, but enough of it for each section of the story that's being told, because there's so many things that happened in Vegas that the movie would actually be 5 hours long if we made it as long as we wanted it to be, with us to be able to explain everything the way we wanted to explain it. But can't do that. So you have to cut it down to 77 or however many minutes it is. And in doing so, some of the information has to be scaled back, and then you have to determine which is important enough to keep in there that keeps the gist of the story the same. And that's a tough decision that an editor, which Ramsey is, has to do. And so I applaud him for his efforts, because he did a damn good job. I think anybody that's seen this can say that it's put together quite well, and it does tell the story, and it's very little wiggle room for someone to say that they didn't do what's claimed in the movie. If they do, it would be very interested to hear that answer. So anyway, so that's my thing on it. Go see this movie. If you're anywhere near me, I'll pay for it, and then we can see it together. Maybe at a bar or something like that, and I'll broadcast it with the phone. But anyway, but yeah, I'll, over the next month, I've got a lot of crazy shit that I'm doing. So you're going to see me pop in and out from various locations around the country, probably. But anyway, everybody stay cool. I appreciate you dropping by. Secrets, thank you for hanging around and coming in as usual and saving the day. Ramsey, wherever you are, thank you for being on board. We'll do this again. I'm going to try to, I know I've said this before, but I'm going to try to get back to the Wednesday shows. So I can have something that's something you guys can see once a week or whatever, if there's really something to talk about. If not, you'll just see me just sit there twiddling my thumbs. But anyway, I appreciate everybody. And CL, sorry that whatever, I still don't know exactly what happened. I wasn't able to find all of that, but I don't know if you can hear that, but you know who I'm talking about. But anyway, so I'll figure that out. But anyway, I appreciate everybody coming by. In-serve is probably on right now. He's probably mad that I'm actually on at the same time. He'll say I pulled a burgundy on him or something. But you guys have a great night. Thank you for stopping by. I appreciate all of you. Bye-bye.